The matter I'm calling is D101CR 2024-13.
Welcome to a Legalbytes presentation of the Alec Baldwin trial. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. If you want more on the background of the Alec Baldwin case, check out our video on it, linked in the description below. But otherwise, you be the jury. Is Alec Baldwin responsible for the death of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins as the man handling the revolver that killed her? Or is he being unfairly targeted as an actor who actually shouldn't be expected to be in charge of firearm safety? Tell us what you think. But in the process, the one rule is don't be a dingus. Remember, everyone comes from their own perspective and opinion, and everyone comes to conclusions at their own pace. Agree or disagree, but always respectfully. Okay, let's get into it. All right, you guys, welcome back. Welcome. that auto zoom is just so funny on the new StreamYard app. Alrighty, folks. So welcome to another trial. We have yet another big one to watch, to comment on, to discuss. And so welcome back. We've got another one. This one will not be nearly as long as the one that we just covered. That was the Karen Reed trial. This is, of course, the Alec Baldwin case, the Alec Baldwin trial. He is on trial for involuntary manslaughter for the death of cinematographer Halyna Hutchins, just like I said in the intro to this live stream. So what's going to happen? I don't know. This is going to be a much shorter trial. This is, I saw a word from the judge saying that she wanted this to be basically over by the end of the 19th of July. So that's next Friday. So we'll see how this goes. The Hannah Gutierrez-Reed trial was not terribly long. It was maybe a little bit longer than this possible length, but I think there was maybe more for them to go over, more for them to discuss. There were some pretrial hearings, pretrial motions that they went through over the last couple of days. I've been able to pop in a couple times to some of these hearings. You know, some of the things that came out are that there's not going to be any producer testimony, which is fascinating. That's a huge win for the defense, I think, going into this trial, because I think that him being a producer was one of these big arguments by the prosecution to say that he had extra responsibility, he had extra control, he had extra power over other people in terms of the safety on set. But we have talked about the fact that there are different types of producers. Somebody can be a producer in name only. Someone can be a producer in more of a managerial role on set. Which one was he? It sounds to me, based on the judge's determination on this issue, that maybe he was more of a producer in name only, because she basically said it's not relevant to the issues at hand here. In order for her to decide whether or not it's relevant, it's like you have to have determined whether or not, you know, what that role basically was, what kind of a producer role that basically was. So it sounds to me like we're not going to be hearing much of anything about him being a producer. Another thing that was a defense win, which was something that kind of bugged me a little bit from the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed trial, the Armorer trial, if you joined us for that, was the fact that the prosecution tended to have a lot of these lay witnesses kind of merge their testimony over into expert testimony territory. And so here the defense worked really hard to say, no, we've got to limit that. They are lay witnesses. They can't give their opinions. They can't give like lay testimony plus. And the judge agreed with the defense on that. So there were a couple wins for the defense here early on, and we'll see how that goes moving into the rest of this trial. So of course, today we've got day one, we've got opening statements. We are looking for both sides to give the theme of their case, the roadmap, the list of promises that the jury is going to see or not see. What are they going to be able to conclude by the end of this trial? What kind of evidence, what kind of witnesses? So, you know, this is, like I said, it's a bill of promises, and this is an opportunity for both sides to set the framework for the jury to be able to understand the information that they are about to see. In the first Rust trial, the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed trial, the prosecution did not do such a great job of their opening statement, in my opinion, because they kind of just did this thing that I really hate when lawyers do this with opening statements, where they just sort of throw all of the information at the jury and expect them to like somehow retain it when like you're not ready to be drinking from a fire hose yet. You need a bucket first, right? So hopefully Carrie Morrissey has learned from that, and either she's delivering the opening statements or her new co-counsel, because she has a different co-counsel now than she did before. Maybe they will have learned from that experience from seeing the trial themselves, perhaps. And they so hopefully they will provide an opening statement that will give much more of a sort of theme and, I don't know, a bit more of a package for people to be able to understand and organize this information as fresh people. Now, talking about the defense team, we've got some new faces with the defense team. We've got Luke Nickus. I think that he is the lead attorney here from what it looks like. And then we've got Alex Spiro. I want to pronounce it Alex Spiro. But I've heard people pronounce it Spiro. So I'm going to go with that. So these two guys are high profile, very high profile attorneys. They are razzle dazzle, as I like to say. They are very shiny. So I expect to see some real fireworks, some real like trial acting, I guess you could say, coming from these guys. Carrie Morrissey, if you watched the first trial, if you watched the Armorer trial, you know her very well. You know that she brings the spice. Hopefully in this trial, we will see sidebars, not snide bars, because the last time there were too many snide bars, in my opinion, until kind of towards the end when the judge finally sort of took control over things and made them go up for sidebars. Now, if you've been watching the Karen Reed trial, you will now hear, at the very least, the objections and the basis for the objection. So we won't have this sort of mystery of like, what was that objection for, what happened. You will very likely hear the actual basis for the objection. So, I think that is about it. As always, let me know if you have questions in the chat. I'm going to pause for commentary. Tag me in it. That's the best way to show it, or add a bunch of like capital Q's or something so that I can see it. I apologize if I miss it. There is one question here. Firefly Bakery Sweets. You watched the pretrial stuff Monday. Judge was not so happy with state about not turning over information till like a week or so ago. That I missed, actually. That's a bit of drama that I missed. But thanks for letting me know. Also, Christopher Lambert, thank you so much for becoming a YouTube member. Welcome to Bike Club. Very happy to have you here. I hope you can join us for our next members only live stream. It will have to be on Saturday, 10 a.m. East Coast time, because of course we are in trial right now. So that, and enjoy early access to uploads and other stuff like that. So except for recaps I try to just get out as quickly as possible, but all other regular content videos, you will get some early access to that as well. Okay. And Wings, thank you so much for being a member for 1 month. Good morning. Later, let us say a pre-trial prayer for KM's glasses, Carrie Morrissey's glasses. There's no way they make it till the end of trial. Well, they are her number one prop. So we are gonna see those get all the mileage. Okay, folks. Okay, let's get started with this, shall we? And don't worry. As always, we will get caught up.
And now I'm going to explain some trial procedure. First of all, I want you to know this trial is being filmed, but you are not being filmed, and you will not be filmed.
She's talking to the jury, by the way.
Throughout within the courtroom, okay? All right. So I'm going to, this is a criminal case, as you know. I'm going to reread the grand jury indictment. It's very formal, so we'll go with that. Count 1, involuntary manslaughter, negligent use of a firearm, in that on or about October 21, 2021, in Santa Fe County, New Mexico, state of New Mexico, at Bonanza Creek Ranch, located at 545 Bonanza Creek Road, Santa Fe, NM 87508. The above-named defendant did cause the death of Halyna Hutchins in the commission of negligent use of a firearm. Count 2, count 1 in the alternative, involuntary manslaughter, without due caution or circumspection, in that on or about October 21, 2021, in Santa Fe County, State of New Mexico, at Bonanza Creek Ranch, located at 545 Bonanza Creek Road, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87507, the above-named defendant did cause the death of Halyna Hutchins by an act committed with the total disregard or indifference for the safety of others, and the act was such that an ordinary person would anticipate that death might occur under the circumstances. Again, Mr. Baldwin is...
Okay, I'm going to put this at 1.25x speed to catch up a little bit here. And also, yes, we have Alec Baldwin's brother here, one of his brothers, and his wife, Hilaria, in the courtroom as well. I assume this is also another family member. So this is very, very interesting.
Is presumed innocent. The burden is always on the state to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. What I say now is the introduction of the case and the instructions. All right. Along with those instructions previously given, these are preliminary only and may be changed during or at the end of trial. First of all of you must pay close attention to the evidence. After you've heard all of the evidence in the case, I will read the final instructions of law to you. You will also receive a written copy of the instructions. You must follow the final instructions in deciding this case. And just so you know, there's going to be no transcript available to you. Juries have asked me that, so I'm telling you up front, okay? Again, the trial is expected to last 8 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of next week. That's the trial. That does not include your deliberation time. The usual hours of trial will be from 8:30 to 5, typically,
Okay.
With a half hour for lunch. No, an hour for lunch, and then a morning break and an afternoon break. Again, please report to the jury lounge no later than 8:30, unless we're instructing you otherwise for different reasons. But in your mind, you can always expect 8:30 to be here, okay? Do not come into the courtroom unless you are accompanied by my bailiff, Steve, okay? You may take water into the courtroom with you, and you can also take coffee or tea or if you have a lid on your cup, okay? We stand up out of respect for you because you are the ultimate decision makers as to the facts in this particular case. So when you come into the courtroom, you can go ahead and be seated, and then we will take our seats. And again, it's important to hear. So please raise your hand at any time you can't hear. Don't be self-conscious about it. Don't wait until a couple of questions have been asked. You've got to, if you can't hear, you've got to shoot that hand up right away, okay? All right, this is a public proceeding, so people may go in and out. You may find yourself looking at who goes in and out, but after a while, you'll get used to it. But if there is anything that is distracting you from being able to listen and be involved in this case, please tell Steve immediately. He'll let me know, and I'll do my best to get rid of the distraction. As you know, the temperature we cannot control. All right, so sorry, we'll try to get the county in here if it plummets
Another
too high.
trial,
I
some heat
doubt it'll
problems.
plummet too low. You are allowed but not required to take notes during trial. Steve has given you a pen. Okay. Please put your name on the front page of your pad and then take notes beginning on the second page. On breaks, follow Steve's instruction on whether to take the pad with you or whether to leave it on your chair. You don't have to worry about confidentiality. They'll be locked up at night, and when the trial is finished, they'll be shredded. Okay. Don't let your notes take the place of your independent memory of the evidence. When taking notes, please do not forget to pay close attention to the trial. Listening and watching witnesses during their testimony will help you assess their appearance, behavior, memory, and whatever else bears on their credibility. Let's go through the order of trial for those that have not engaged in a criminal trial before. A criminal trial generally begins with the lawyers telling you what they expect the evidence to show. These statements and the statements made by the lawyers during the course of the trial can be of considerable assistance to you in understanding the evidence as it is presented at trial. Is there something distracting you, juror?
No.
I'm talking to the other one. Okay.
Ooh.
Statements of the lawyers, however, are not themselves evidence. The evidence will be the testimony of the witnesses, exhibits, and any facts agreed to by the parties. After you have heard all of the evidence, I will give you final instructions on the law. The lawyers will argue the case, and then you will retire to the jury room to arrive at a verdict. It is my duty to decide what evidence you may consider. Your job is to find and determine the facts in this case, which you must do solely upon the evidence received here in court. It is the duty of a lawyer to object to questions, testimony, or exhibits the lawyer believes may not be proper, and you must not hold such objection against the objecting party. I will sustain objections if the question or evidence sought is improper for you to consider. If I sustain an objection to evidence, You must not consider such evidence, nor may you consider any evidence I have told you to disregard. By itself, a question is not evidence. You must not speculate about what would be the answer to a question that I rule cannot be answered. It is for you to decide whether the witnesses know what they are talking about and whether they are being truthful. You may give the testimony of any witness whatever weight you believe it merits. You may take into account, among other things, the witness's ability and opportunities to observe, memory, manner, or any bias or prejudice that the witness may have, and the reasonableness of the testimony considered in light of all of the evidence of the case. No ruling, gesture, or comment I make during the course of the trial should influence your decision in this case. At times, I may ask questions of witnesses. If I do, such questions do not in any way indicate my opinion about the facts or indicate the weight I feel you should give to the testimony of the witnesses. Questions by jurors. Ordinarily, the attorneys will develop all pertinent evidence. It is the exception rather than the rule that an individual juror will have an unanswered question after all of the evidence is presented. However, if you feel an important question has not been asked or answered, write it down on a piece of your notepaper and give it to Steve before the witness leaves the stand, okay? I will decide whether or when your question will be asked. Rules of evidence or other considerations apply to questions you submit and may prevent the question from being asked. If the question is not asked, please do not give it any further consideration, do not discuss it with the other jurors, and please do not hold it against either side that you did not get an answer. Conduct of jurors. Again, very important. You must decide the case solely upon the evidence received here in court. You must not consider anything you may have read or heard about the case outside the courtroom. During the trial and your deliberations, you must avoid news accounts of the trial, whether they be on radio, television, the internet, or in a newspaper or other written publication. You must not visit the scene of the incident on your own. You cannot make experiments with reference to the case, and in this day and age, you cannot Google or research any of the subject matter of this case. Until you retire to deliberate the case, you must not discuss this case or the evidence with anyone, including each other. Very important, as I said yesterday, when you go in that room, you don't talk about the case. You wait until you are a jury that is deliberating, okay? If an exhibit is admitted in evidence, you should examine it yourself and not talk about it with other jurors until you retire to deliberate. It is important that you keep an open mind and not decide any part of the case until the entire case has been completed and submitted to you. Your special responsibility as jurors demands that throughout this trial, you exercise your judgment impartially and without regard to any sympathy, bias, or prejudice. To minimize the risk of accidentally overhearing something that is not evidence in this case, please continue to wear your jurors' badges while in and around the courthouse. If someone happens to discuss the case in your presence, report that back immediately to Steve. Although it is natural to visit with people you meet, please do not talk with any of the attorneys, parties, witnesses, or spectators, either in or out of the courtroom. If you meet in the hallways or elevators, there's nothing wrong with saying a good morning or a good afternoon, but your conversation should end there. If the attorneys, parties, and witnesses do not greet you outside of court or avoid riding in the same elevator with you, they're not being rude. They are just carefully observing this rule. All right, so we're going to begin the case. The case starts with opening statements. The state begins first because they have the burden of proof, and then the defendant. All right, go ahead, counsel.
All right, we're going to put this back to normal.
Just one quick housekeeping matter.
Normal speed.
Johnson's getting set up.
All right.
Okay. So we have opening statement now. I'm going to update the pinned chat here, and I will also update the description as always. Also, while we are waiting for that, Firefly Bakery Sweets, thank you so much for pointing this out. Judge ruled Monday that they will just say objection and go up to sidebar and not say what the objection is. There was quite an argument about it, and judge said, it's my court. I am so disappointed by that. She must have watched the Karen Reed trial or something. All right. Well, I'll still call out what the objections are when I manage to catch them. Hopefully, in between my attention lapsing, hopefully it doesn't, but it happens. ADHD post pregnancy brain, it happens, but I'll try to call it out as much as possible. Draco Amy, also, I wonder why they don't provide transcripts. Is it a resource management issue or is there more to it? It's actually to promote the jury to pay closer attention. If they know that there's going to be a transcript at the end of the day or, at the end of the trial, they might decide that they can kind of relax during the trial. But if they know that they have to retain everything, they are more likely to be focused. That's one of the main reasons. Melody Sinar, I hope I pronounced that correctly. If it is determined that actors are responsible for safety, what ruling Would that ruling affect the way movies are made in the same manner the Titanic disaster changed maritime law? I think it's entirely possible, because even though, when we talk about precedential value of these kinds of cases, this is a trial court, not an appellate court. So in terms of the
Thank you. Good morning.
I'm gonna pause this real quick just so that I can answer this real quick. But when it comes to precedential value, in terms of like legal precedent, there's nothing about this case that is going to set any sort of a legal precedent that other courts have to follow. Not in New Mexico, not anywhere else, because this is the trial court level. So any other courts that want to follow this sort of precedent, first off, this is New Mexico law, so it would be more likely New Mexico courts that would be looking to this case for persuasive authority. But otherwise, it's not mandatory authority. This doesn't create any kind of mandatory authority that any other courts have to follow. However, the Hollywood industry might look at this case and say, well, if there are guns on set and something goes wrong, we can potentially be held liable. The actor can potentially be held liable. So there are like business and industry-wide implications that are definitely possible to follow from this. Even if he's acquitted from this, because if you know the story of the Twilight Zone movie, how one of the directors, because there were three directors, it was three parts. One of the directors was actually charged for the deaths of three of the actors in that movie, when there was a horrible, horrible thing that happened with a helicopter that was used. It crashed. The three main actors for like that portion of the movie all died. And it was like one of the last scenes that they were filming. He was charged. He was actually ended up being acquitted, but it did still change the industry, because insurance and all kinds of things like that, to try to make things safer and make it possible for other people in the film crew to have someone else to talk to about safety complaints rather than the director. Now, obviously that hasn't prevented these things from happening outright, right? Because we're still here today. But there were some changes that were arguably positive that came out of that whole experience, even with him being acquitted. So that still is also possibly the case here. And since I just used this word, can you define acquitted? It's the opposite of convicted, right? So if he is found guilty of involuntary manslaughter, he will be convicted. If he's found not guilty of involuntary manslaughter, it means he's acquitted. It means it doesn't mean that he's declared innocent, but he's declared not guilty. Acquitted, same thing. Okay. Let's get going with the opening statements.
When someone plays make-believe with a real gun in a real-life workplace, and while playing make-believe with that gun violates the cardinal rules of firearm safety, people's lives are endangered, and someone could be killed. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what this case is about. It's simple, it's straightforward. The evidence will show that someone who played make-believe with a real gun and violated the cardinal rules of firearm safety is the defendant, Alexander Baldwin. You will hear over the course of the next few days that in the fall of 2021, a movie called Rust began filming at the Bonanza Creek Ranch just south of Santa Fe in Santa Fe County. You will learn that this movie was a Western with a lot of gun action. And while it was a movie set, it was a real-life workplace for many people. But you will hear this workplace was on a tight budget. And you will learn that some of the people who were hired to work at this workplace were very inexperienced. And one of those was the armorer, a very young woman named Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. You will hear testimony from crew members who worked on the set, who will tell you that to them, Ms. Gutierrez's inexperience was obvious. You will also learn that this workplace has some talented people. And one of those was the director of photography, a vibrant 42-year-old rising star named Halyna Hutchins. You will also learn that the director of this film was Joel Souza, another talented individual who cares deeply for his projects. The evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that like in many workplaces, there are people who act in a reckless manner and place other individuals in danger and act without due regard for the safety of others. That, you will hear, was the defendant, Alec Baldwin, the lead actor on this film. You will learn that this movie began filming on or about October 6, 2021. But the defendant did not arrive on set to begin working until about October 13. And you will learn that prior to arriving on the set to work, he requested to be assigned the biggest gun available. So he was assigned this revolver, a replica of an 1873 single-action revolver manufactured by Pieta Firearms in Italy. You will hear from Alessandro Pieta, who will tell you he manufactured this gun. And he will tell you he manufactured it in 2015. And he will explain the quality control measures that Pieta Firearms follows in order to ensure that firearms that are manufactured by Pieta Firearms don't have any problems or issues. Mr. Pieta will tell you that this firearm he himself manufactured, and that when Pieta sent it to EMF, which is the company that distributes firearms for Pieta Firearms in the United States, this gun was in perfect working condition. You will hear from Justin Neal, who is a representative of EMF, a company out of California that has historically been known to provide firearms to the movie industry. Mr. Neal will tell you that when EMF received this firearm in 2017, it was in perfect working order. And in fact, when EMF had this firearm, it was subjected to numerous quality control inspections because it was used as a show gun at gun shows. The evidence will show that in September of 2021, an individual by the name of Seth Kenny was contacted by the folks with Rust Production. They asked Mr. Kenny if he would be able to provide some firearms for the filming, for use during the filming of Rust. You will learn that Mr. Kenny owns PDQ Firearm and Prop. It's a duly licensed firearms dealership. Mr. Kenny then contacted EMF and ordered several single-action replica revolvers. And in September, or on September 29, 2021, Mr. Kenny purchased this gun. And you will hear that Mr. Kenny received it from EMF, and it was in perfect working order. The only thing that Mr. Kenny did to this gun was to insert the firing pin, because since it was a show gun, it didn't have a firing pin. But you'll learn that that's a very easy step. All he had to do was just insert the pin, and that's it. And then Mr. Kenny had the firearms, this one and some other firearms, transferred to the set of Rust at the Bonanza Creek Ranch. And on October 13th, 2021, the defendant was supposed to have a training session with this gun and this young armorer. But you will see that during this training session, the defendant had somebody or a couple of people filming him while he's running around shooting this gun. You will learn, ladies and gentlemen, or you'll hear during this trial the use of the words prop gun. And you'll learn a prop gun is this real gun. It's not a toy. It's not made of rubber. It's a real gun. You will also see evidence, ladies and gentlemen, that during the days before that fateful October 21st day, the defendant handled this firearm multiple occasions. You will see video footage of the defendant firing this firearm, working perfectly fine. But you'll see evidence, ladies and gentlemen, that each time the defendant handled this firearm, he did not do a safety check with that inexperienced armorer. And you'll hear that the reason he didn't do a safety check is because he didn't want to offend her. The evidence you will see will paint a real-life picture of a real-life workplace where this defendant mishandled this gun. You will see him using this gun as a pointer to point at people, to point at things. You will see him cock the hammer when he's not supposed to cock the hammer. You will see him put his finger on the trigger when his finger's not supposed to be on the trigger. You will hear about numerous breaches of firearm safety with this defendant and this use of this firearm. And the evidence will show that on the morning of October 21st, 2021, the camera crew walked off set. And you will learn that one of the reasons that camera crew walked out is because they were concerned over safety breaches with the use of firearms. The evidence will show that the morning of October 21st started out a couple of hours behind. They filmed some scenes at this church on the Bonanza Creek Ranch. And you will see that one of those scenes required the defendant to pull out his gun. This was in the morning. Pull out his gun. And you'll hear the director tell him, pull it out and hold it. And the first time, you'll see evidence the defendant does what the director tells him. But you will hear the director tell you that many times the defendant would do his own thing. So then the director in the morning asked him, okay, do it again, just like you did now. The defendant pulls out the gun, but this time he cocks the hammer. The evidence will show they then broke for lunch. And around 1:30 or so, they came back to this church to do what's called a blocking. The evidence will show that Ms. Hutchins wanted to do a blocking for an insert. And you will learn what a blocking is, just working out the details of the moves of the actor. It wasn't even a rehearsal. You will hear from one of the witnesses who walked into the church and saw the defendant kind of playing with his gun. And then you will see evidence or hear evidence that Ms. Hutchins and Mr. Souza were talking to the defendant about doing this insert. And the insert was just supposed to be from here to here. And it was supposed to be of the defendant just slowly taking his gun out of his holster, and just holding it at an angle. The evidence will show that someone asked the armorer to bring the defendant's gun to him. And she did. She brought it into the church, showed it to David Halls, who you will learn was the first assistant director. The gun was empty. Ms. Gutierrez then handed the gun to the defendant. But then you will hear that Ms. Gutierrez was given the gun back, and she took it and loaded it with dummy rounds. And what you will learn is that dummy rounds are inert rounds. They look like real rounds, but they are very easy to tell that they are not because they'll rattle. Ms. Gutierrez then went back to the church, showed the revolver to the first assistant director very fast. They only checked about 3 rounds, very quick. And they missed 1 round. You will learn that one of the rounds in that revolver was a real round. And the evidence will show that Ms. Gutierrez then handed the gun to the defendant. And what you will learn is that once again, the defendant failed to do a gun check or a safety check with this armor. So he takes the firearm, puts it in his holster. Then Ms. Hutchins and Mr. Souza were doing this blocking. And the evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that the defendant, again, did his own thing. You will hear from an individual by the name of Kent Jorgensen. Mr. Jorgensen will tell you that he's been involved in drafting and revising movie set safety rules. You will learn that these movie set safety rules require actors like the defendant to treat every firearm as though it's loaded, to never point a firearm at another person, and to never put your finger on the trigger unless you're prepared to shoot or to destroy whatever's in front of you. The evidence will show that on October 21st, 2021, after that lunch break, the defendant once again violated those set safety rules. And during this blocking, the director had instructed him to just slowly take out that gun and just hold it at an angle. But you will see that the defendant takes it out quickly the first time, points it. And you will hear witness testimony who will tell you the first time he does it, his finger is on or around the trigger. He does it again, takes it out very fast, points it. And once again, you will hear testimony that his finger was on or around the trigger. And the evidence will show that that third and fatal time, he takes it out once again, fast, hammer's cocked, he cocks the hammer, points it straight at Ms. Hutchins, and fires that gun, sending that live bullet right into Ms. Hutchins' body. You will learn that this bullet was a .45 caliber round that entered Ms. Hutchins' body right underneath her right underarm. It perforated her right lung. It traveled through her spine, lacerating her spinal cord, and then it exited on the left side of her back. That bullet then went into Joel Souza's right shoulder, and it came to rest in his back, from where doctors removed it once he was transported to St. Vincent's Hospital here in Santa Fe. You will learn, ladies and gentlemen, that Ms. Hutchins did not have the same fate. You will see the aftermath of the shooting, and you will see medics frantically working to save Ms. Hutchins, to stabilize her, to transport her, to airlift her to UNM Hospital. But the damage from that bullet was too much. Ms. Hutchins succumbed to her injuries and bled to death. The evidence will show that meanwhile, after the shooting, the defendant began to claim he didn't pull the trigger. The evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that's not possible. You will hear from Mr. Pieta himself, who will tell you that gun will not discharge without a pull of the trigger. You will hear from firearms experts who will tell you that gun will not discharge without a pull of that trigger. The evidence will show that law enforcement officials arrived at the scene on October 21st after the shooting and immediately took this gun into their custody. Then later, they asked the FBI for assistance in processing this gun for forensics and examination. You will learn that the gun and some ammunition that was taken from the set and from PDQ arms were sent to the FBI for analysis. You will learn that the gun first went to the DNA section of the lab, where a DNA analyst found the defendant's DNA on this gun. And then the gun was transferred to the firearms and tool mark section of the lab, where a firearms examiner examined this gun very carefully and closely. Bryce Ziegler, who is the firearms examiner for the FBI, will tell you that when he received this firearm, he first examined it. He didn't see any defects, didn't see any modifications. He tried and he checked the hammer in the 3 different positions, cocking positions. He checked the quarter cock position, fine. Checked the half cock position, fine. Checked the full cock position, fine. And when he held it in the full cock position, you will hear that hammer held until he pulled the trigger. You will also hear that Mr. Ziegler test fired this gun 12 different times. And each time that gun fired as it was designed. Each time when he pulled that trigger, it fired. And he will tell you that not once did this gun malfunction or discharge on its own. Now, the evidence will show that because the defendant had been claiming that he didn't pull the trigger, Mr. Ziegler suggested one last test to the sheriff's department. Mr. Ziegler told the sheriff's department that he could do what's called an accidental discharge test. He obtained authorization to do this test, and you will hear that he left that test for last because that test could potentially damage the gun. Mr. Ziegler went forward after he received this authorization and conducted the accidental discharge test. And you will hear, ladies and gentlemen, that during that test, a couple of the internal components of this firearm damaged. You will hear that the trigger sear and the full cock hammer notch were damaged during the accidental discharge testing. The evidence will show, however, that before this accidental discharge testing by the FBI, this gun functioned and worked perfectly fine. You'll see the video footage of the multiple occasions during which the defendant used this firearm on the set, and each time he fired it, it was working just fine. And in fact, you'll hear evidence that the defendant himself admitted in December of 2021 that this gun didn't have any mechanical problems. You will hear from the 2 of the country's leading experts on firearms forensics, Michael Hague and Lucian Hague. And they will tell you that they examined the revolver and the damaged pieces extensively. They will tell you that the damage to the full cock trigger notch is consistent with the accidental discharge testing that was conducted by the FBI. Lucian Hague will tell you that in August of 2023, he examined the trigger sear, the other piece, and that when he looked at it initially with the naked eye, there was nothing wrong with it. He couldn't see anything. But then he put it under the microscope, and he noticed some kind of rough microscopic diagonal lines on the surface of the trigger sear. And since at the time he did not know how Mr. Ziegler had conducted the accidental discharge test, he opined that these very small microscopic lines were likely not caused by the FBI accidental discharge testing, but he could not exclude that as the source of those lines. Then a few weeks ago, Mr. Hague will tell you that he spoke with Mr. Ziegler and he learned how Mr. Ziegler had conducted the accidental discharge test. Mr. Ziegler explained that he affixed that firearm onto a fixed platform and then struck the firearm on 6 different planes with a rubber mallet. And Mr. Ziegler explained to Mr. Hague that he had not affixed the mallet to another fixed device. Instead, he did it freehand. Mr. Haig will tell you with his 50 plus years of experience as a firearms forensics expert, he opined or concluded that those very tiny microscopic diagonal lines on the surface of the trigger sear were likely caused by the FBI's accidental discharge test. The evidence will show, ladies and gentlemen, that regardless of how those tiny microscopic lines got on that trigger sear, these firearms experts will tell you that those would not affect the functionality of this firearm. At the end of this case, ladies and gentlemen, you are going to conclude and be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that on October 21st, 2021, that gun the defendant had asked to be assigned worked perfectly fine as it was designed, and that the fatal and one of the main problems that afternoon of October 21st was that the defendant didn't do a gun safety check with that inexperienced armorer. He pointed the gun at another human being, cocked the hammer, and pulled that trigger in reckless disregard for Ms. Hutchins' safety. And you will be convinced that the only true and just verdict in this case, so that true justice can be served, is a verdict of guilty to involuntary manslaughter. Thank you.
That's a really good opening statement. Much better. I'm going to pause it really quick just to make just a few comments here. I don't want to go too long on this, but this was a much better opening statement than what they gave, than what the prosecution gave in the first trial, in the armorer trial, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's trial. She was much more concise. She gave an overall flow to her argument, basically saying the problem was not the firearm. The firearm was working properly. It did not malfunction. This is all because Alec Baldwin was playing pretend with a real live firearm, and he didn't treat it with the proper respect that was due. He was doing his own thing, as he was doing throughout production before that point, not really listening to what he was supposed to do, not following the instructions that are in the actor's manual, for example, things like that. And so therefore, that's how this happened. And I imagine that the prosecution is also going to bring up Hannah Gutierrez-Reed at various points in time, and maybe at the end of the trial, and do something similar to what they did at the end of the armorer trial, and say, when they were like, Alec Baldwin is also responsible and he'll have his day in court. At closing of this trial, they'll probably bring that up about Hannah Gutierrez-Reed and say, look, she's also responsible here, and she had her day in court, and she, I don't know if they'll say whether or not she in fact was convicted, but they will probably say she indeed also had her day in court before this point. So, but this was good. This was concise. This was clear. It started with the storyline. So let's see what happens with the defense opening statement. I know there are also some questions here. Let me see if there is anything that's necessary for the opening statement. No. Okay. I'll answer these after the next opening statement. But now we've got the defense coming up.
Ira?
Touch the screen. I have to touch your hand.
All right. Let's see, maybe we can
This was an unspeakable tragedy, but Alec Baldwin committed no crime. He was an actor acting, playing the role of Harlan Rust. An actor playing a character can act in ways that are lethal, that just aren't lethal on a movie set. These cardinal rules, they're not cardinal rules on a movie set. And I don't have to tell you much more about this because you've all seen gunfights in movies. And the reason that can happen is because safety is ensured before the actor. On this movie set, there were people responsible for ensuring the safety of the set and the firearm. Those people failed in their duties, but Alec Baldwin committed no crime. The most critical issue in this case is how a real bullet got on a movie set. The evidence will show that real bullets are never supposed to be on movie sets. Movie sets use dummies and blanks. Movie sets use dummies, fake inert bullets that look like real bullets, they don't go bang, for when you want a close-up of the gun. You can't tell them apart from live bullets by looking at them, which is why live bullets can be nowhere near a movie set. And if the director wants a shot of the gun going, bang, poof, there's blanks that they can use. And those blanks look nothing like real bullets. And they are used for those shooting scenes. And, they'll play these videos that they described of Alec's, firearm in the movie going bang, poof. And people are conditioned to seeing people firing weapons and thinking that's a dangerous act. That's a dangerous act. And they will play those videos and give you that image to try to tarnish him in your eyes. But that's not what happened here. On this set, there was a real bullet, something that should never be on a movie set, something which has nothing to do with making a movie. And you will hear no evidence, not one word, that Alec Baldwin had anything to do with that real bullet being brought onto that set. The second critical issue in this case is, why did a real bullet get loaded into a prop movie gun? It is undisputed that the bullet was loaded into the gun by the armorer, the person on set whose responsibility it was to ensure the gun was safe. And so picture that moment of the armorer placing a live bullet into that firearm. You hear the prosecutor say, he did this or he performed in a certain way. He picked out the biggest gun as his prop. It's to tarnish him in your eyes. You will hear no evidence whatsoever. No evidence that anything Mr. Baldwin did, that something he did in that moment, that horrible moment when she put that bullet in that gun, none of it had anything to do with Alec Baldwin. And finally, the first assistant director's job, the head of safety, Dave Halls, checks it before it goes to the actor. And he will tell you he made a tragic mistake. He failed to detect a live bullet. And Alec Baldwin had nothing to do with that either. So all this evidence that the prosecutor just outlined, all of it, has nothing to do with these critical issues. Nothing. Which leads us to this. The evidence will show that on a movie set, safety has to occur before the gun is placed in the actor's hands. In this case, this unique case on a movie set, the prop gun was placed in Mr. Baldwin's hands and cold gun was announced, meaning it had been checked and double checked by those responsible to ensure the gun was safe. It was just a prop. They all thought it was just a prop and could do no harm. The actor's job is to act, to rehearse, to choreograph his moves, to memorize his lines. He's Harlan Rust. He's an outlaw running for his life, who in the incident in question, he's pulling a 6-shooter to try to defend himself. That's why the gun has to be safe before it gets into the actor's hands. His mind is somewhere else, in the being of another, a century away, an outlaw. He must be able to take that weapon and use it as the person he's acting would. To wave it, to point it, to pull the trigger like actors do, in ways that would be lethal in the real world, but are not lethal on a movie set. And I'm going to show you that scene now before lunch. And if we could just play action.
I'm gonna go find some help.
I don't need no damn help.
You're gonna die if I don't.
He's wounded and on the run. Play again. Continue.
Harlan Rust. Need you stand up nice and slow. Toss some your weapons you have.
It's like we're getting a little
He's on
mini
the church
trailer here.
pew, bleeding, his hand gripping the revolver. He would defend himself against the men in the movie. Play.
One more. You good? Ready?
Harlan Rust. Did you get up nice and slow, tossing the weapons you have?
Drago, I think we'll be okay on this one.
What help can I get right there?
Joel, you want me to wait to give you that line till he lands? Till camera lands?
Yeah.
Yep.
7 minutes. Draw your gun and look up. Point your gun, okay?
Okay, which way? Camera right or left?
This way. For now.
So camera left for now.
I'll stand right here for you, Alec.
So whip it out.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me get this all greased. Ready?
What she said?
Okay, ready? Okay, ready? Ready.
And set. Ready, and action.
Harlan Rust.
Do one more just like that. You got one more? Yeah.
Ready, ready, ready,
They
ready.
want him to do it again. There's no danger. They want him to do it again.
And set. Ready, and action.
Harlan Rust. Nice.
It's a scene similar to scenes we've all seen in movies and television, performed by thousands of actors. And the scene that continues after lunch is the same scene. It's just not, unfortunately, captured on videotape. And the scene they envisioned and acted out, that prop gun was positioned in the afternoon so close to the camera that you could see inside, that you could feel it. You could feel that it was loaded. And it was loaded, of course, with dummies. Dummies to make it look like a real gun. But this one time, one of those dummies was a real bullet. The real bullet was not known to anyone in that church. Amongst the actors, directors, and crew in the scene, everyone was doing exactly how they go about their business every day on a movie, not as if some lethal element had been included in the environment. You will see creativity and movement and everyone talking and vibrant. No one had any idea that this venomous, toxic element had been inserted into this magic they were creating. But it did. It entered that place. It killed an amazing person. It wounded another, and it changed lives forever. And so to find out what happened on that movie set, you need to do something that the prosecutors could never do. You have to step back and remember what they were doing on a movie set. What were Halyna Hutchins, the cinematographer, Joel Souza, the director, and Alec Baldwin, the actor, doing on Bonanza Creek Ranch? You know, movies and magic have always been closely associated. The first people that made movies were magicians. And this imagination that happens in movies, you know, King Kong, he can stand above a city, and Superman can fly, horses and snakes and gun battles. For this to all work, for cinematography, what Halyna did to work, for acting to work, you have to be so close to the barrier of real and imagined that the viewer feels that they're there, that it's real. The viewer can't see strings from the stuntman. The stuntman must leap. The snake must hiss. And guns happen in movies all over this country for many decades. Bang, bang. You've all seen it. Guns have been an element of theater and film and television since the earliest of times. Depictions of war and combat, Spartacus, it stirs audiences because it feels real. Later films, Platoon, Apocalypse Now, they showed the unvarnished realities of war. This ranch in Santa Fe, it had been the scene to many gunfights and movie scenes, well before Alec was even born. Laramie, Butch and the Sundance Kid, and these Westerns.
I think this is actually, it's very floral in a sense. It's kind of nice actually that he's like bringing up like, this is what movies are. This is like, remember all of these amazing movies that you've seen that have had these fantastic productions and they transport you into a whole new world and they do, all of these unspeakable things. King Kong exists and Superman can fly. And, then you've got Spartacus, you've got Platoon, you've got Apocalypse Now, where all of a sudden, like you as a viewer are transported into this world where you are experiencing the horrors of war, but you're doing it without actually experiencing it. That is the magic of movie making. But there is a certain reality that has to play into that magic in order for that to actually come off the screen to transport you. There are certain things that have to happen. And so what his whole point here is that, in order for that to happen, the actors on screen have to do things that we typically in the real world don't have ourselves, doing, or we say we, are not allowed. For example, pointing a firearm at another human being, is typically what we don't do unless you intend to shoot that person. But when you're on a movie set, that happens all the time, right? You point a firearm at someone else. Now, of course, all of this relies on the fact that safety measures have to be taken seriously. So, is this going to work for the jury, or will the prosecution be able to sort of pull this all back and say, hey, look, that's all great and fine and dandy and all magic of movies is great, but but the actor still has some responsibilities. It's not that the responsibility is on everyone else. The actor still has some safety responsibilities as well. So we'll see. I mean, this is exactly where I thought this division was going to come down in this trial, with between the two different perspectives. And we might honestly not know how this is going to turn out until the jury actually comes back with a verdict. And this might also be a longer jury deliberation than what we saw, particularly with Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's trial. Hers was, I think, in a lot of ways, a lot simpler because her job was safety. Whereas Alec Baldwin's job is not necessarily safety, but does that actor still play a role in maintaining that safety nonetheless? That's a huge question here. So this is such a fascinating issue to be exploring throughout this trial. I honestly I will say this from the outset. As far as personalities are concerned, I don't like Alec Baldwin. I don't like him as a person based on everything that I've ever heard about him. I think if I ever ran into him in person, I would try to make that interaction as short as possible. But there is a good possibility that I end up siding with the defense here on this particular case. I don't know. I honestly have no idea how I'm going to be reacting to this trial as the evidence is presented. And I'm saying that having knowledge of the previous trial, having gone through the previous trial with you guys, assuming you were here with me for the first one. So we'll see. I don't know. We'll see. This is such a fascinating issue here in this trial.
The evidence will show that guns are in movies because movies are about people's lives and guns are in people's lives. So let's talk about the evidence and how the lethal bullet got there. How did this happen and how did it unfold? The evidence will be the following. Everybody on a movie set has a role. The armorer armors, the director directs, the actor acts. They work in harmony, but they have a division of responsibility. Safety being important has the first assistant director, whose name is Dave Halls, above the armorer and is sort of the safety of the set. And on that day in question, the cast and the creative directors and crew in the church, it's a fake church. Their actors are not in their normal clothes. It's costumes. There's debris falling from the ceiling. It's fake debris. And they yell out cold gun. And that is an important term you're going to learn in this case. It means that the gun is cold. No one need worry. But even that requires a little bit more explanation. Cold gun doesn't mean no live bullets. There are for sure 100% no live bullets on movie sets. That's unimaginable. Cold means you don't even have the fake blank poof in it. You don't need to worry even about eye gear or earplugs for that fake bang. It means it's empty, inert, cosmetic, can do no harm. Cold guns can't hurt people. It's impossible. Literally impossible for a cold gun to hurt somebody. You could hurt you more by dropping it on your foot. And that's why these artists are carrying on in their art. Cold gun, all clear to go. And the armorer on this set hands a prop gun to Alec, like she had done times before, like people have done with him in movies for a generation. And he's there. He's in the movie set church with his movie set gear and his holster, and he takes his movie set gun. And he's deeply focused in that moment on his character. The artists, the crew members, they're moving around him. Again, no eye gear or earplugs, nothing to protect against. They carry on, they practice, they rehearse, they take a lunch break. Some folks leave, some don't. They continue the scene. Dave Halls, the head of safety, is actually practicing the movement so they can frame the footage that will happen after lunch. And the prop cold gun comes back. The prop cold gun comes back, cold gun. They call it again. Same gun, again, safe. The first assistant director, Dave Halls, head of safety for the entire film, a man with decades of experience, comes and takes the additional step and inspects the gun. Verifies again, cold gun. Everyone relax. Go back to focus on the making of a movie. There's nothing in the gun that can hurt anybody. And Alex sits on that pew. And the creative directors, the crew, they're moving around him, in front of him. And Harlan Rust, he begins, like the prosecutor told you, rehearsing, acting. This is a completely mundane, uneventful, routine act on a movie set.
Interesting that he referred to him not as Alec Baldwin, but as Harlan Rust. I think that's a very powerful way for the defense to message to the jury here that in these moments, he's not a normal human being. He's gone into like the magic world of Hollywood. He is embodying the character. And so he needs to be able to be the artist that is doing his art. And that, sort of is this like separate kind of world for him to be able to do what he can do to make the movies, the movie magic, right? It's interesting. I don't know if it's going to work for the jury, but it's an interesting use of language to try to frame that for the jury.
On a movie set. And so everybody carries on. Nobody fathomed, imagined, foresaw any possible danger. They moved around Alec as he practiced his draw. As the prosecutor put it, working out the details of the move and the actor. He does it again, does it in a different way. Nobody bats an eye. And they will tell you that the investigation revealed that Baldwin was practicing drawing and pointing the weapon of the scene with guidance and instruction from Halyna Hutchins and Joel Souza. The gun goes off. Everybody's shocked. Alec is startled. He immediately says, I didn't mean to shoot I didn't pull the trigger. Immediately. What the hell just happened? They collectively exclaim. Shock turns to panic. 911 is called.
We need an ambulance out at Bonanza Creek Ranch right now. We've had 2 people shot on a movie set accidentally.
The defense is playing the 911 call.
Someone was shot. 2 people accidentally with gunshots as on movie set, Bonanza Creek Ranch. Send it. I'll connect you with medical dispatch. Don't need that. San Jose Fire and EMS, what's the location of the emergency? No, Bonanza Creek Ranch. We've had 2 people accidentally shot on a movie set by a prop gun. We need help immediately. Okay. I just fucking AD that yelled at me at lunch because asking about revisions. This motherfucker. Did you see him lean over my table and yell at me? He's protected guns. He's responsible for what happened in the now, Mimi? No. I'm a script supervisor. How many people are injured? 2 that I know of. I was sitting, we were rehearsing, and it went off, and I ran out.
Accidentally shot on a movie set with a prop gun. The fucking AD, it was his responsibility.
Ooh.
Not a word about Alec Baldwin. While they're en route, police EMS.
Okay, but that's for the jury to decide, right? The responsibility of, whose responsibility it really was. That's why the jury's here. So, I mean, defense got away with having this played out in court in front of the jury because this is in the 911 call. But it's like, if I'm the prosecution, I'm going to want to object to that and ask for some kind of an instruction to be like, this person's opinion doesn't matter. You know, whoever called this in, who you don't know who this person is just yet. Interesting.
The cast and crew are outside trying to figure out what happened, frantic, talking to those responsible for the prop and its safety. The armorer is yelling, sorry. Hall's the first assistant director is panicked. The prop master, Sarah Zachary, I don't know exactly where she is at that point, but they check the gun feverishly. They take the ammo out of the gun. They look at it. What the heck happened? They go back to the prop cart that houses the ammo. They're touching the gun and manipulating the gun, emptying it. They go and move some stuff off the prop cart, trying to figure it out. Sarah Zachary, the head of props, will tell you she threw some stuff out. And eventually, of course, EMS and police arrive pretty soon thereafter. And Halyna Hutchins and Joel Souza, the director, are transported to the hospital where Halyna tragically passes away. And I'm not going to be asking questions about her condition after she was wounded or the medical interventions that followed. Her injuries, the efforts to revive her, are not in dispute in this case.
Good.
The evidence will be there. The prosecutor may present some of these emotionally charged images, but we're not going to be asking questions about that, and it's not an issue of dispute in this case. You jurors are allowed to ask yourselves whether or not that should be the focus or the focus should be the evidence. So police enter the scene. They have lapel cameras. Thank God they have lapel cameras. You want to see what happens? The evidence will show you can play the videotape. Want to see if they take the right gun? Play the videotape. Want to make sure what the people said or did they're remembering correctly? Play the videotape. And so they immediately recover the prop gun and they secure it. That's off to the side. And the reason that you preserve things in the moment is so that you know what existed in the moment, the evidence in the moment, the people and the witnesses and what they said in the moment. These folks, the members of Rust, they'd never been through anything like this before. That is why what they originally said matters so much in this case. If you remember anything I say today as the evidence proceeds, remember that. Look at the evidence of what the people of Rust said and did that day. Life changes, memories change. There are human motivations, internal pressure, external pressure. That's why preservation is so important. So the police continue. In terms of the prop cart and the prop ammo that's on the cart, it's manipulated, altered, kind of messy. And, you know, at this accidental shooting on a movie set, the police begin to make some mistakes. No one had ever investigated a prop gun on a movie set before. They recover the prop gun, but they don't wear gloves. They don't have the prop car inside the crime scene. Someone moves it onto the crime scene. People start touching it and showing, okay, this is a dummy, this is a blank. And then they make another mistake that matters in this case with some more significance, which is that they don't secure the prop truck that houses the cart. See, that cart that they roll off comes from a truck where all of the ammunition, all of the firearms are, and that's where they're stored. They don't secure the prop truck for several days. And then the prop house that supplies the truck, that supplies the cart, they don't secure for over a month. A lot of mistakes. They had never investigated a case in a movie set. But they had the prop gun. That was key. And so they needed to figure out where the live bullet came from. They had the shell casing, Starline brass. That's the sort of make. You'll hear that phrase, Starline brass. And the police were right to focus on that. That was the lethal element. And so they work outward. Makes good enough sense. Folks around the ammo and the gun to be interviewed at the precinct. The armorer at the precinct. She loaded the live bullet. Hall's head of safety. He double checked. And Alec walks up to the police. You'll see this early today. And he says, I'm here, whatever you want to do, whatever you need me to do. Just tell me where to go. And Sarah Zachary, the prop master who threw out the stuff at the cart, they missed her that night to bring to the precinct. But the rest of them at the precinct. And thankfully, we have the lapel cameras.
And then they cleared the gun outside after his request, and I witnessed them clear it and saw the bullets.
Okay. So the one was
the one that was missing, the one that fired, we don't know, but all the other ones were proper.
I can pause this. I can turn this off. Move on. That was just a quick snapshot of the scene.
Let's approach her. This is Ms. Johnson.
Yeah. He's starting to get into like presenting evidence full on here, which is okay. You're not really supposed to do in an opening statement, especially if you haven't had permission to do so. So I can see why the prosecution is objecting here, and we are going to fast forward through this part.
The remaining witnesses from inside the church are interviewed on the scene. They're interviewed with lapel cameras. They're interviewed by the lead detective, Detective Cano. And those witnesses, some of them will come in here and testify. And not a single one of them will tell you anything different than what I'm about to tell you about the evidence. The gun was double-checked, verified it was a cold gun, not an actor's responsibility to check. Safety was ensured before. Alec was doing his practicing, his rehearsing, his movements. People manipulate and point guns on movie sets. The gun went off during the rehearsal. No one saw him intentionally pull the trigger. It was obviously a tragic accident, but Alec committed no homicide. Alec took the gun from those charged with its safety. He did not tamper with it. He did not load it himself. He did not leave it unattended. It completed his costume and his character. It was an actor handling a prop and integrating it into the character of Harlan Rust. There was a dedicated professional there, off camera, whose sole sacred responsibility was that prop safety. And Dave Halls, the head of safety, was there by her side. Everyone relied on that. And it was tragic that they let them down. He was just acting as he has done for generations, and it was the safety apparatus that failed them all. So law enforcement continues. They need to find the live bullet. That was the lethal element. So they, led by Detective Cano, execute a search warrant on the church. And that's what law enforcement does. They immediately go to a judge. They say, this is what we need to do. They go into the church urgently before anything can be altered. They're confirming it was an accident, not a crime in the church. They search for guns and ammunition, videos and photos. There was no further answer in the church. They had the prop gun. They had all those witnesses secured. Their statements are clear. Alec had committed no crime, but the bullet was a mystery. And so they focus on the bullet, the critical, lethal bullet, and how did it enter the movie set. So they had the prop cart, and then they go do the warrant on the prop truck. And so at that point, and I'm going to put up a photo so that you can see who some of these individuals are. They're trying to figure out when they go to the truck, what is the source of the lethal bullet? And so they execute a warrant on the truck approximately a week later. The Seth Kenny that you heard about in the prosecutor's opening, the supplier for the set, he's there. Sarah Zachary, the prop master, she's there. And they walk through what's inside of the prop truck with law enforcement. But there's no answer to the lethal bullet. And this case then takes on, all this pressure. The media begins swirling. Where is the lethal bullet? How did it get on that movie set? And what about that actor, Alec Baldwin, who had nothing to do with why the bullet got on the movie set? And so police and prosecutors, they work hand in hand, meeting after meeting, trying to find the lethal bullet, meeting with Seth Kenny, meeting with Sarah Zachary, the prop master, the supplier. Where is it? And about a month after the incident, Sarah Zachary finally sits down with law enforcement to answer some questions. And she explains to them that she threw away some stuff. She disposed of some stuff. And the prosecutors and police keep meeting, swirling media. And then at that point, they go to the last step, right? We've done the cart, we've gone to the truck, met with Sarah Zachary, and they go execute a search warrant on, as the prosecutor told you, PDQ, the prop house. And again, Seth Kenny's there to greet them, let them in, and they don't find the lethal bullet. They never did. They never did. And as things roll into police and prosecutors, cell phones and photos and forensics, looking for this shiny object, they found another shiny object. Instead of trying to find the source of the lethal bullet, they focused on Mr. Baldwin. But Mr. Baldwin was like every other actor. He goes bang bang in movies. He's told when guns are cold or not. He rehearses and acts as his character. safety proceeds before the actor. Once the actor has the prop gun, he can handle it however a person he's acting as would. A properly cleared gun can't hurt anybody. And so they told you about some of the things that Alec said in the statements that they will take or picked out a few lines from. But he won't tell you anything different, that he took a gun loaded and cleared by the armorer and the AD. He made motions with the gun as he was rehearsing. He didn't intentionally pull the trigger. The gun just went off.
This is very interesting because, I was wondering why he was going down this whole route of like, they went and they looked for this shiny object that was the live round that was on set that ended up killing her. They looked for the source of it, and he kind of spends a lot of time. It starts to lose me a little bit, to be honest with you, where, he's going into detail about Sarah Zachary and all David Halls and all this other stuff of like, how did this thing get in there? And my thought was, this is like just a, almost like a boogeyman kind of argument for the defense here, which is like trying to distract the jury so that they think about this whole issue of like, how did this live round get on set in the first place? It's very beneficial to Baldwin because it's a bit of a deflection from the real issue in this particular trial. Like, it doesn't matter how it got there. The question here is, should Alec Baldwin have checked it? Is that something that should have happened? Does he still play some kind of a role in the whole safety process from start to finish? Obviously, other people play a role here, but does that also include the actor, or is the actor excluded from that so that they can focus specifically on the art of acting? So that's I was kind of feeling like this was just a bit of a deflection from the real issues here. But then he says, and then the investigators looked for the other shiny object here, which is Alec Baldwin, which, as I was thinking about that being a deflection, then I was like, it's kind of smart though, because then he's like comparing that shiny object to that shiny object, and both of those, the argument that the defense would like the jury to adopt is that both of those are shiny objects that are deflections from the real issue, which is, who's actually responsible here. It's interesting. It's a very clever like logic argument, assuming that the jury is following along with him, of course. Yeah, very, very interesting.
And he does say, I didn't have a problem with the gun before. And this idea, that they said that he didn't want to check because he would offend them. In this moment, he's been doing this for 40 years, the evidence will show. And he has habits. And there are also SAG guidelines that tell actors what to do and what not to do. And the SAG guidelines don't tell actors to check the gun. You will see them. That's not the actor's role. And so I guess the point that they're trying to make is that why in this specific moment he doesn't break his habit of 40 years and check it differently and sort of insult them this one time. If he had done that and started playing with the gun in that way, they'd be saying, arrogant actor, why is he doing that? So they will play these statements, Alec's statements. You're going to hear a man in shock and grief, a father, an artist, worried about his family. You hear he's, on one of the calls, he's going to meet with the decedent's family, the Hutchins family, and he's upset about that. He will talk to law enforcement. He will call them. He doesn't need a lawyer.
I do kind of feel like Alec Baldwin is hamming it up a little bit here. I don't particularly like it. I wish he would stay a little bit more stone-faced in this moment. Maybe that's just my own personal bias, against Alec Baldwin, but I feel like he's acting a little bit here right now. You guys, let me know what you think, because you might have a different like interpretation of like his face right now. Yeah, anyway.
Commit a crime. He will call them and offer to meet and speak over and over again. And ask anyone in the acting world. Actors know. Actors rely on armorers and point guns and shoot guns. The Armorers Act, what they did is clear and proven. The head of safety, you will learn, took responsibility for his verification failure. But Alec committed no homicide. So law enforcement didn't have a homicide case against Alec Baldwin, but they changed the question. You heard the prosecutor tell you about this. Did he pull the trigger? Did he pull the trigger? Did he intentionally pull the trigger? And if he did, of course, that would only make his statement incorrect, right? That would mean he would have misspoke, been incorrect. And I want to stop for a moment and just tell you, because you're going to hear a lot of testimony, expert testimony, like the prosecutor told you, about the gun functioning imperfectly. Did he let the hammer down when he cocked it? Did he hit the trigger? Did he, in a calculated manner, as the prosecutor made a motion, fire the gun like that? And when this issue is discussed, it's easy to sort of pull yourself into courtroom land and away from a movie set. On a movie set, you're allowed to pull the trigger. So even if he intentionally pulled the trigger like the prosecutor just demonstrated, that doesn't make him guilty of homicide. He did not know or have any reason to know that gun was loaded with a live bullet. That's the key. That live bullet is the key. That is the lethal element. But again, as the prosecutor told you, if they could prove that he intentionally pulled the trigger and he was imperfect, imprecise, wrong with what he said, then maybe you take that and you say he's lying. And if he's a liar, he committed homicide. And so what they do is they take the prop gun. They're blinded by the shine. They're blinded by trying to disprove Alec. They take it and they order a destructive test on the firearm. They order the FBI to take a test that they know will destroy the firearm. It's a pointless, unnecessary test where they blindly try to make this big case by taking a mallet and smashing the firearm. At the time that they did that, they knew that Alec had adamantly maintained, that he was manipulating the hammer and the gun just went off. That the witnesses said it went off out of nowhere. That there are these accidental discharges that happen on the set. That guns have issues in the real world. That this gun had a hair trigger. And the owner's manual of this specific gun actually says that if you load it with a live round or any round in the chamber, in that last position, and you drop it like you see a cowboy in a movie, this type of old cowboy gun can accidentally go off. I don't remember hearing anything about that. The evidence will show that. So rather than trying to answer the question of what happened, they proceed with the destructive test. They eliminate the one item that could prove what Alex said and believed. They didn't offer him a chance to test the gun. They didn't take the gun apart before they broke it and destroyed it and look at its inner workings. They didn't turn on their videotape. They just destroyed it. Can't ever be tested in the same condition it was in that day. Won't ever allow Alec to show his truth. And the destruction of this gun that you will hear in this evidence is symbolic of this entire case. Because the
okay, I'll let him finish.
Officers will tell you at that point, they weren't really investigating anymore. They were trying to disprove Alec, to get Alec.
Yeah, I'm never a fan of anyone using his truth, her truth in a courtroom. I understand it has merit, it has value, in some context, for example, like, when people are getting therapy, that's a context where that can work properly. But anytime it's a little bit of a turnoff for me personally. Let me get a few comments here. Just because, thanks for the super chat. I really think there is less physical evidence in question regarding this, though. There's much less to question. It's more about his negligent act. Agreed. Coach Fides, this is long, feels like a closing. It is starting to feel like a closing. I'm wondering if he's going to be drawing an objection soon. Thanks for the super chat. Danny Phillips, thanks so much for this super chat. Good morning. You're my favorite trial streamer. I listen to your live trial streams all day while I'm doing deliveries. Your commentary is the best. It really explains what is going on while it's going on. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I hope you have a good day doing deliveries while listening in. Just because. Also, thanks for the super chat. Is it me or does this border on argument? It does. It is sounding a bit like argument. And there's also more questions here that we will get in a little bit. But yes. It is starting to feel a bit argumentative, and I'm wondering if he's just winding up to end this opening statement.
To have this day. And so after the destruction of the firearm, they hired some expert witnesses you heard about to pick up the pieces, so to speak. And the state retained Lucian Haig, an expert with over half a century of experience. And he will come into court and he will tell you He's never seen anything like this in his entire career. They conducted a pointless test, a test that would lead to inevitable destruction of the firearm. There were other correct tests that they could have done to prove whether or not it could have accidentally discharged. None of the experts can test the gun in the condition it was in on the day in question. Why? Not because of something that Alec Baldwin or the crew members of Rust did. They were all clear. The gun just went off. But because of something that law enforcement did. And they deprived him of that opportunity. However, Lucian Haig will tell you that in his analysis, he did find modification that he thought likely pre-existed the FBI testing. And what that modification means and how it impacted the gun is hard to perfectly know, of course. But it was a modification on an important part, the critical part of the firearm. And it was important enough for them to put into a report and to write a new opinion about. They felt this revelation had to be sent to prosecutors. And they maintained that position, that this modification was a matter of import for almost a year. And then a few weeks ago, before trial, they just took it back. They just took it back. You will get to see the circumstances of that take back. How far they would go for the shiny object. They never solved the question of the lethal bullet. They destroyed the gun, and all they were left with is Alec Baldwin and the movie they intend to put on. But because they never solved the lethal bullet, they eliminated the prop gun. There will not be one witness, not one shred of evidence in this trial that Alec knew or should have known the gun was loaded with a live round. So they can't prove their high-profile homicide case. So they will proceed to then here and now tell you about other things, other evidence that you will hear that has nothing to do with what happened in the church on October 21st. That the movie said as a whole was improper or anything, that they hired the wrong armorer. I think I heard in opening. The evidence will show that the armorer was hired by somebody else, trained by somebody else, had done gun scenes on Rust with somebody else before Alec even got there. She was the daughter and the apprentice of the most famous and well-respected armorer in Hollywood. And she had just left serving, being an armorer for Nicolas Cage on another Western.
Which I don't know if you want to reference that, because Nicolas Cage had some very choice words about Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's service on that set. He was not happy with Hannah Gutierrez-Reed afterwards. But this is, I feel like this is where they're gonna land it is having this whole case point right at Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. The defense has every interest, of course, in putting all of the blame on Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, and with good reason, right? She does bear responsibility in this case. She bears a lot of responsibility in this case. This is why a jury convicted her in under 3 hours in her trial.
Then they'll come in and they'll say, but what about the movie guidelines? You heard about Mr. Jorgensen and the movie guidelines, that one of the protocols wasn't followed, or there was a set safety issue about something unrelated to this, like these movie guidelines on a set, or the things of Navy SEALs and NASA. The guidelines were followed. They followed the safety guidelines. Actors don't check the weapons. Safety is ensured by dedicated personnel. So they will say, but there had been accidental discharges on the set, that guns had fired accidentally prior, not related to Alec, by the way. But again, that's the people we looked at. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's fault, Sarah Zachary's fault, perhaps, Dave Hall's faults, workplace issues. Some of them will end up, and you will hear the witnesses in this case, many of them have brought civil lawsuits. And you'll hear that, in those civil lawsuits, they're presenting evidence to try to meet a burden, not a criminal beyond a reasonable doubt homicide trial burden, but they're going to try to prove their cases in civil courts. And that's where faults and accidents are at worst 99% worked out. Not here. But you'll hear these members of the Rust crew come in here. They'll try to make sense of this for you. Some of them have sued. Some of them are in grief. Some of them are in grief and have sued. And part of this grief they feel, that everybody feels, is understandable. And what they will do is they will tell you, if only we had had a second armorer. One of them will say, if only Dave Halls had checked better. If only the camera hadn't been right there and Ms. Hutchins wasn't leaning over the camera. If only I myself did this. If only Alec did that. This is natural, their testimony. It's part of the human condition. It's part of grief.
Objection, Your Honor.
None of them knew.
Yes.
Interesting. All right. We are going to fast forward.
As I was saying, the witnesses in their grief will look for reasons to try to make sense of this tragedy. But again, none of them knew or should have known about the lethal bullet either. No one had any idea that it was on that set or in that gun. In that world, they were all in it together. And you will hear that none of this other stuff has anything to do with those two critical questions we started with. Why there was a live bullet on set, why the armorer placed it in the gun, and of course, why the head of safety failed to detect it. None of it speaks to whether Alec knew or should have known those things. He didn't. No one on that set did. It was not foreseeable. You will hear that word from the witnesses and from eventually the instructions. Foreseeable. This was anything other than foreseeable. And they must prove beyond any and all reasonable doubt that this was foreseeable. Total indifference to human life, that death might occur. He's an actor. He's an actor. But here we are at a homicide trial. And so they will pull witnesses, and witnesses will be cross-examined. They will push themselves to the edge of truth and beyond. These things about, Alec didn't notice this or Alec didn't notice that. I want to make sure that you're clear on something that the evidence will show. He had been filming on that set for a handful of days. The evidence will show he had just gotten there. It's not as if he had been there for months and months and noticed things and failed things, and he had just gotten there. You don't notice every little thing when you start at a new place and when you're in the character of Halyna Rust. But they will push forward and they will have gaps in the evidence as well. Don't expect you to be hearing and for them to call the first AD head of safety. I don't know if you'll be hearing from the lead detective, Cannell, who investigated this case, the lead detective, or the sergeant that supervised him, Sergeant Zook. I don't think you'll hear from Mr. Schilling, who was the lead investigator for the prosecutors. And so as you hear this, you jurors can assess about that gap of evidence. And there's one thing that I can tell you you will not hear also. You will not hear from an actor or an expert in acting. And so they will play the videotapes of Alec Baldwin, the actor, acting. They will show you perhaps over and over again him in shooting scenes. Bad Alec shooting a gun the wrong way in a movie scene. They will try to get you to picture that and forget that this was a movie set in the first place. And you will see actors in a Western acting. And your mind might go to your favorite gun scene in your favorite movie. You may picture actors and actresses doing exactly what you see here. The other actors in Rust doing the same thing that Mr. Baldwin was doing.
Doesn't make it
But
right,
when
though.
you come back from that moment, remember, this is a homicide trial. And you will see soon that the reason they play those videos of him over and over is because they don't have any evidence of actual homicide. And you will learn the truth. Not a day goes by when we don't wish Alec had saved her life. But never, the witnesses will tell you, in the history, is something that an actor has done. Intercepted a live bullet from a prop gun. No actor in history. No one could have imagined or expected an actor to do that. So just remember that truth. So when they cry out justice, justice is truth. This was an unspeakable tragedy. Alec Baldwin committed no crime. Thank you.
Yeah, it's
All right, thank you. What we're going to do now is we're going to take our morning bathroom break. So please don't talk among yourselves or anyone else about the evidence received here in court. And follow what Mr. Bing tells you to do. And we'll see you back here about 20 of. All right, thank you.
All rise to the jury.
okay, we're about to catch up through that. Okay, so let's get some questions here from folks. And I'm going to pull this off the screen while we do so you guys can have a better view of the indie bear. Okay, let's get these questions here. And hopefully we will be caught up going into the lunch break. Melody Sinar, if it is determined that actors are responsible. Oh, I already answered this one. My apologies. Also, Legalbytes, do you know much about gun laws? Do actors need to be certified for things the way stunt doubles do? I don't think that they do have any requirements for certifications here. ZTO, Legalbytes, can he get 2 times 18 months for the 2 counts? How many counts did the armorer charge against her? So, okay, they're actually, it looks like there's 2 charges. They are 2 alternative counts. So he's not going to be the max that he can be found guilty of is 2 of them. So this is, oh, wait a second. Wait 1 second. Let me do this really quickly. Okay. Just wanted to update the description so that there's timestamps that are proper. Okay. Okay. So sorry, like I was saying, the charges, it's technically 1 charge, it's 2 alternative counts. It means that there are 2 ways that they can find him guilty of the single charge. So there's only 1 round of 18 months that he can get. The max that he can get is 18 months. Genergy, question, what's the maximum time if he's found guilty? Like I said, 18 months. Just me, will HGR be testifying? She is on the defense witness list, or sorry, excuse me, the prosecution's witness list. And the defense has also said everyone that's on their list is also on our list. So the possibility is there for her to testify. We don't know for a fact if she's actually going to be called, but she is on the list. So she's been reserved for it. Apparently, I've heard that there might be some discussions behind the scenes about getting her arrangements made to bring her out of prison for that, because she is currently sentenced. So she would be wearing regular street clothes, not her incarcerated stuff, because there would be all kinds of prejudicial issues there with that. But she might be testifying. LK Raiden, Legalbytes, did we hear during the last trial that AB was producing his own films because he wasn't getting hired because of his behavior, or did I just hear that before / outside of trial? That must have been outside of trial, because I don't know that I've heard that before. Okay, Melody Sinar, can they really tell when parts of a gun were damaged? Is that a real thing? To a certain extent, probably. I don't know. I'm not a gun expert myself, but I think that they can tell when, based on how certain pieces are fitting together, when a certain part has broken apart, if one impacts the other, things like that. But I mean, other than that, I don't know. I'm not the gun expert. We'll have to listen to what the experts actually say here. Arteris and Legalbytes, what if any difference do you predict in this prosecution compared to lollygagging? Compared to lollygagging, I think that we will be able to pay attention much more easily because of the style of asking questions, for one thing. So, yeah. Carrie Morrissey has things that annoy me about her. She has a certain spice that is not always the most appealing to me. Maybe this time around I'll feel differently just because I'm more familiar with her in this trial. I don't know, or maybe she'll have toned it down or differently. I don't know. But she can ask good questions. She can direct a witness very, very well. So she is very skilled. And also the other attorney, I'm missing her name. I didn't get it beforehand, but she also she had a good opening statement. So I think that both of them on the prosecution side will be very, very competent in this particular trial. So we'll see. We'll see how this one works out, but I do expect there to be a lot fewer what if any's, and they'll probably be proper questions this time around. Lou Whimsy question: at what point do jurors find out what case they are overseeing? Did they know this was the case before walking into court today? Yes, they knew that this was going to be Alec Baldwin. They knew that this was going to be Let's see. Yeah. Okay. It's not muted. They knew that this was going to be an Alec Baldwin case. They knew that this was going to be an involuntary manslaughter case, or some kind of a death would be involved here. And so that, because they had to be asked, do they have biases against Hollywood, against Alec Baldwin, there were actually one or two people who said that they could not serve on the jury because they were biased against him or against him related to this particular case. One of them, I think, had said that they had done a ton of research into the case and had formulated very strong opinions in the case. Then there was just another person that was like, I just don't like Alec Baldwin because of his stance on unions or something along those lines. So yeah. Yeah, so they definitely knew that during the jury selection process. It's important to find that out, to root out any kind of biases. LK right down question, since they won't address the producer part of AB's role, couldn't defense just argue problems with security and how irresponsible people were hired by people in charge? Yeah, they can do that. They can say, look, these other people were responsible. This was their job. This is not Alec Baldwin's job. And that's what they're essentially doing right from the get-go with these opening statements. Janet G, Legalbytes. Okay, two-parter here. It's almost as saying an actor pulls a rope and that rope is supposed to drop a bucket of confetti. Instead, the rope is pulled and the entire bucket falls and hits someone on the head. Who is at fault for that? The actor that pulled the rope or the person who was in charge of securing the bucket? That's one way of looking at it. However, another way of looking at this that I've often thought about is, what about when you have an actor that is in a scene, obviously you've got stunt drivers and things like that, but in a scene with a dangerous animal or with an automobile and they're behind the wheel for it, there are certain safety checks that should be had with handlers and things like that. But if the person is acting irresponsible with a known dangerous animal, they do things that are just downright stupid with, say a live tiger on set, are they to be held responsible? Sure. Probably. I don't know. These are just different ways of looking at the different dangers that are on set that can be on set for different movies that don't involve firearms. I don't know. Maybe that's helpful. Maybe that's not. But we can definitely compare these to different types of dangers. Melody Sinar, do you know, is the jury allowed to take notes because its opening is confusing? The defense opening did get a little bit long-winded. I do agree. They are allowed to take notes. They have to keep those notes at the courthouse at the end of the day and when they go out on breaks. But yes, they are in fact allowed to take notes. So that is going to be helpful for them at the end of the trial, especially. Let me make sure that I am collecting all of these. Draco Amy, Legalbytes prosecution opening was Erlinda Johnson. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Moomin559 became a YouTube member. Thank you so much for joining Bike Club. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. You are helping to keep the lights on here. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Oh, what am I doing here? Okay, sorry. I hit the wrong button and all of a sudden it my screen went wonky. Okay, we're back. we're back to normal here. Thank you so much for supporting the channel and becoming a member of Bike Club. I so appreciate it. And actually, with that, if you guys are enjoying the coverage here, obviously we are at the very, very outset of this trial, but if hitting the like button is the number one way that you can definitely help the channel. It helps to push these live streams out to more people out on YouTube. There's obviously a lot of people that are streaming this. Court TV, Law and Crime, they do it without commentary. There's also a lot of channels that are doing it with commentary. But if you are enjoying it, hitting the like button is one of the best things that you can do to help push this out. And then there's more ad revenue and all that kind of stuff. But if you are absolutely enjoying this and you want to support the channel and you are capable of doing so, becoming a member is the best thing that you can do for the long term of the channel. either by becoming a YouTube member on YouTube, a Bite Club member on YouTube through YouTube memberships, or by supporting on Patreon. There are links to both in the description below. So either one is totally awesome and appreciated. Like, you have no idea. But if you are not able to do so, then that is also totally 100% fine. Hitting that like button is the best other thing that you can do. Sonata number 8, thank you so much for also becoming a YouTube member. Wonderful. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Really, 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 really appreciate that. All right. More questions here. Nathan Longhair, Legalbytes. Honestly, it bothers me that there's any focus on the defendant's face. Of course, as we're looking at the defendant's face in this trial and all others, there's no right way to act for hours and days on end. I 100% empathize with what you're saying. I think that there is arguably too much focus on the defendant in every single trial, to include Alec Baldwin. And I think someone else pointed out in the chat that, like, there's a difference between seeing him when his face takes up the entire screen and when you see him, in more of the scenery. And I do agree. I do agree that we are able to hyper focus on his face when the camera is zoomed in on him in that way. And the jury doesn't necessarily see that. I think that sometimes it is helpful to see what the jury sees. That does make an impression. How the parties act, how the defendant here acts during the trial, throughout the trial, can have an impression on the jury. Let's face it, they're not supposed to make decisions based off of stuff like that, but they're going to, because it's just normal human psychology. It's the same thing with evaluating the witnesses that are on the stand. They're going to see how they react to certain things, the way that they act on cross-examination versus direct examination. Things like that are going to impact how they evaluate the credibility of that witness. And the same thing is going to be true of the defendant here. However, I do agree that there is too much emphasis oftentimes with these live stream trials on the defendant's face. So, Alec Baldwin here absolutely included in that. Holly B, question, is Baldwin hard of hearing? He keeps looking like he's struggling to hear what's being said. I don't, not that I'm aware of. I don't know. Maybe he is, but I just don't know it. I don't think so. Melody Sinar, Legalbytes, no crying in the courtroom, right? There is sometimes crying in the courtroom. We try to caution both sides from doing it too much, because that can have an influence on the jury and all that kind of stuff. It is always better when you are the client, when you are the party in any kind of a case, to try to remain steel face as much as possible, so that you don't look like you're trying to influence the jury. And so that is something that people might actually be looking out for in a case like this, especially someone like Alec Baldwin, who is a professional actor. So, it's one of those things that being more restrained than even usual might actually be a better thing. But of course, it's hard to do that throughout hours and hours and days of trial. So, also ZND Fifth, holy cow, gifted 50 Legalbytes memberships. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. That is amazing. You have always been so generous, but I don't think I've ever seen 50 Bite Club memberships being given out here. So let me go through. I always try to read out for people when they have been gifted one, because people don't necessarily know it until they hear it on screen if they're not watching the chat. So let's see here. Ardo Risnin, Firefly Bakery Sweets, Sophie, Joanne, Ange, Handsome Calvin, Nan R, DM, Echebelin Yuxakaya, Rosie Canavan, Andrew Tomasi, Pitbull Crew, Carrie B, Astrid McLee, Mark, Cavelli Thompson, Brittany Pratt, Narci, maybe, Son of a Gun, Fernando Fuentes, DeMajor LDN, Mina Does Art Stuff, Catastrophe Kate, Gina D, Gamer Wolfie. Let's see here. Alexander Baginski, Heather Ann, Crystal Harris, Cole Z, Mama Ain't Easy, Mr. Massachusetts, Sharon Hudson, Yolanda Martinez, Urshka Podrashki, Laura Speck, Harbor Seal, Simply Swole, Liz Elf, Mackenzie Robite. Oh gosh. Did I miss some? Okay. Alex Matlick, Rich Lawson, Stefan Grebe, Frontline 221, Kelly Burgess, Mega Knight, Emily Perry, Sarah Traris, Ryan Weatherby. There's so many of these. Joshua Gray, Lynn Marie, Joey G17. Oh, sorry, not Joey G17. Sorry. There's a comment on there. I'm reading the one. You're already a member. Let's see here. Also, I think that might be everyone. Did I really read all 50? That's amazing. Thank you so much, D&D Fifth. That is so kind and generous of you. Very, very, very kind. And I apologize if there are others that I have not read out that were there, part of that group of massive group of folks that were gifted memberships here. Okay, the Lucian Legalbytes question. Defense got to bring up a statement from someone else not in the case, Nick Cage. Can prosecution bring up what Nick Cage said about HDR to rebut that? How would that work? An objection? So they would have to probably bring in Nicolas Cage himself to testify about his experience with Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. It's really, they can reference the fact that she was in fact there. I mean, if somebody with knowledge can testify that she in fact was on this other movie set with Nicolas Cage, someone with knowledge has to testify to that. You know, even though you referenced it here, if they don't have someone testifying to that, the jury may end up looking at the defense and being like, wait, you referenced Nicolas Cage at one point and we didn't hear anything about that in the actual evidence. Jury's coming back in, but I'm going to get these questions before we start with the actual testimony here. Melody Center, why are we not hearing what the objections are? Are we not allowed? Apparently, the judge made a similar ruling as in the Karen Reed trial. I guess it must be that she did not want those snide bars from the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed trial to come in here. Those were exceptionally bad during that trial. So she may have just really come down with a very strong hammer and said, you just say objection and that's it, and you approach. So similar to the Karen Reed trial, I don't particularly like it. I don't. It's not my favorite kind of way of doing things in a courtroom, because you have the risk that you are losing things from the record, important information from the record. But that's what she determined. That's up to her discretion.
Call your
Before, okay, she's gonna,
first witness.
State calls Nicholas Lefleur.
okay, it's going to be Nicholas Lefleur. Also, there was an objection during the defense opening statement, and it was where he was talking about grief, and he was talking about you know, I don't know. He was talking about grief, and I think that what the objection there was that the defense attorney was kind of getting into some argument there as well. So I think he was really stepping over that line into argument territory, which you're not supposed to be doing in an opening statement. Okay, so I hope I didn't miss any questions earlier. I think I just caught some from before. Okay, Melody Sinar, talking about acting while crying as a defense for your client might make the jurors think you're acting. Maybe, you know, sometimes jurors will sometimes also, you know, attribute things that the attorneys are doing to their clients. They shouldn't. They're not supposed to. But yeah, I don't know. They sometimes do, for better or for worse. Mew question. Legalbytes, do you think the defense watched the Karen Reed trial and how the public reacted towards corrupt police work? Well, maybe that's definitely possible, but I think it's a very common defense strategy that anytime there are things to pick apart in the investigation that actually happened in the criminal case, that is something for the defense to validly bring up. The Bowles did it in the defense side for Hannah Gutierrez-Reed in the first trial. So, you know, I fully expect it's kind of like low-hanging fruit for any defense attorney to be pointing out in any kind of a criminal case when there are in fact issues. Now, we don't have any situation here with any red Solo cups, so it's not quite as outrageous as in the Karen Reed trial. But there were in fact issues that were highlighted in the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed trial. It still ended with a conviction. So, you know, how effective will it be? I don't know, but I still expected them to make the argument here. And Legalbytes, he keeps going on about homicide as if this was a murder trial. He's going to be so shocked when he finds out about the manslaughter. I know. Yeah, I don't particularly love that he kept calling it a homicide, because homicide has not actually been charged here. This is manslaughter, which is a little bit different. The Lucian Legalbytes question: defense mentioned how lead investigator and others might not be testifying. Do we know what that is about? I don't know. I don't know actually. I think that the corporal who testified as the lead investigator in the Hancock, Alexandra Hancock, she testified as the lead investigator in the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed trial, or at least I thought she was the lead investigator. That was the impression that I had, unless I was, maybe asleep during some of the testimony. I'm pretty sure she was the lead investigator. She testified there very competently. She's on the witness list here. So, I don't know. And I thought I saw her sitting at the prosecution table before trial began today also. So I don't know. I'm not so sure what that is exactly about. I guess maybe we'll find out. WFA's on Cook. What EDB said in the podcast last night that HGR is scheduled to be transferred to the jail on the 13th, which is weird because that's a Saturday. So she might testify on Monday. I suppose so. That may be some stuff that they end up bringing up. Yeah, she may get called up to testify on Monday then. Draco Amy, Legalbytes prosecution opening was Erlinda Johnson. Thank you for that. Firefly Bakery Sweets. They went into a lot of discussion on what would and would not be allowed, discussion wise, of who was what responsibility and such on Monday. Opinion testimony, especially from other people on set, coming from their experience. The judge did in fact limit that, which was a big win for the defense. Sue B question: I'm wondering how the red Solo cups were used during this case. I know, right? I would like to find that out. Tracker question: have we had a breakdown of the charges and what they mean? I may have missed them. I did talk about the charges, or technically charge, 2 alternative charges, but equaling up to a max of 1 charge. There are basically 2 routes to get to involuntary manslaughter is what that means. I did talk about it in the primer video. Link is in the description below. So if you want to see it there, I do talk about the charge and what the prosecution needs to prove there. The Lucian Legalbytes. While I think about it, I figure bringing Nick Cage in would be a waste of time and maybe worse for prosecution to show how bad HGR was. Although, maybe not. And question: new poll post opening statements. We could do that. You know what though? We'll get a new poll in the afternoon after lunch. So we'll see how that works, and if there's any difference between the two. At the end of the stream, we'll close this poll. We'll start a new one for the next stream. How about that? Firefly Bakery Sweets, the objections still get on record when they go up to the judge. She said on Monday, yes. So when they do approach to argue their objection, the court reporter's right there. All of these sidebars get recorded. They all get put onto the record. So that was the one saving grace that I felt, was present during the Karen Reed trial, that if the 2 sides thought that their objection was important enough, they would go up and argue it on the record on a sidebar. But I don't know if, I guess here, every single objection is going to be approaching the bench. So, which wasn't the case in the Karen Reed trial. They would object and then she would give a ruling, which is not my favorite. But maybe here she's going to say you object and you approach every single time, and we'll get it on the record. That makes me feel a lot more secure about what is actually getting put down on the record, how she's making her decisions, etc. So, okay, one more here. Dr. Who 8675309, is this trial footage proper or is it inverted? It is not inverted. It is, as far as I can tell, it is in fact proper. Okay, all right, let's get on here. I think I got everything. Okay. Yes, I think that's all of the questions here. Let's get to the testimony. We're just a little bit behind.
Sir, please,
Raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm under penalty of law that the testimony you give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right, have a seat. Talk into the microphone. Sure. Rules and votes.
I'm sorry? With regard to the invocation of the rule, our case agent is in the room. We just wanted to put that on the record.
The prosecutor indicated that they'd be calling the case agent early in the case. So given that, I did not continue my objection I had earlier to her being present. Thank you.
Case agents allowed in.
So what they just referenced is the rule that they just referenced is the exclusion rule to make sure that any witnesses who will be testifying later as lay witnesses are supposed to be excluded from the room during the testimony. So it looks like there's somebody who's getting up now. I suppose this is going to be a witness here. I don't know that I recognize him from the first trial, so maybe we'll find out. Obviously, there's a distinction for expert witnesses. This is one of the reasons why it's helpful to have someone declared as an expert witness if you can get it, because then they can have way more access to testimony from other witnesses. They can review deposition testimony. They can review all kinds of reports and all kinds of things. But so if there are any expert witnesses in this trial that are sitting in the room, they are not subject to that exclusionary rule. But any lay witnesses, however, cannot be there during the testimony. Yeah. Okay. This right here in the yellow sweater, that is Corporal Hancock, I was under the impression that she was the lead investigator in this case. So interesting if she doesn't testify.
Sir, state your name and spell your last name for the court record, please.
My name is Nicholas Lefleur. My last name is spelled Lefleur.
And how are you currently employed?
The City of Santa Fe Police Department.
And what do you do there?
Police officer.
How long have you been employed at the City of Santa Fe?
2 years.
Can everyone hear Officer Lefleur? Okay. And prior to working for the Santa Fe Police Department, did you work anywhere else?
Yes, ma'am.
Where did you work?
The Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department.
And how long did you work at the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Department?
About 2 years.
And were you on duty on October 21st of 2021?
Yes.
Did you receive a dispatch call?
Yes.
Can you tell us what you received and what you did?
A call came in that there was someone shot at a movie set. Unclear who shot, how many were shot. I happened to be the closest person to the call and arrived on scene first.
So when you arrived on scene, when you say first, were there other law enforcement officers there?
No, not at the time when I got there.
Were there any other first responders present?
There was some fire personnel and what they call the scene medic for the movie set, I guess.
You said a scene medic?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you, let me ask you, when you receive a call for a shooting, what's your primary concern?
Priority life.
And what do you
And to
mean when
make
you say priority life?
Make sure whoever needs help gets help and that the threat is stopped.
And when you arrived on the scene, and where was it?
Bonanza Creek movie set, I guess. It's quite a ways off the interstate.
Okay. And
But
what,
how did you get there? Give us the turn by turn. What street to what street to what street? This is what I'm so used to listening through, not for, but listening through from the last trial. If you've been watching with us since the Karen Reed trial, you are very, very familiar with this. Already, I know that I wish that he would speak up. He definitely is testifying like he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to be testifying. He is a professional in this regard. He's a police officer. Usually, you know, officers generally speaking tend to have a lot of experience with testifying. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe this is one of his first ones, first times that he's testifying. Although I think he also testified in Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's trial. But you know, he definitely feels very uncomfortable. Carrie Morrissey is already trying to do her best to sort of like draw him out to testify a bit more. But I will say this still, even as painful as this kind of feels right now, it's still so much better than the direct examinations by the prosecution in the Karen Reed trial. So we'll see.
what county and state is that in?
Santa Fe County, state of New Mexico.
Okay. So when you arrived there, give us an idea of what you saw. What was going on?
It was a big, old, like cowboy western theme, like city or a town. There's a bunch of people running everywhere, bunch of cars, bunch of people pointing. When I got there, people were pointing towards a church, and I got out and I attempted to grab my medical bag and went in and saw.
Hang on, I'm gonna stop you there. Approximately how many people were there on scene?
I don't have the direct number, but there was more than 100 people.
Have you ever been called to a shooting where there were 100 people already on scene?
No.
Did that present any specific challenges for you?
Yes.
Explain to us what those challenges were.
What if any challenges?
There's a lot of moving parts. You just got to take it one piece at a time, see who's hurt, make sure that one, that nobody's continually getting hurt, and then two, the person who's hurt, medical attention is being given to them, and then go from there.
Okay. And when you arrived on scene that day, were you running your body-worn camera?
Yes.
The state moves for the admission of State's Exhibit 4.
Okay, we're gonna see
No
some
further
body cam
objections,
footage.
Am I want to just make sure I'm connected. I'm ready to play it. Permission to publish?
He's got a little bit of a stink eye.
Are you satisfied with the foundation?
Yes, Your Honor, we've consented to both lapel videos today.
That's fine. So you may publish, this is states 1?
4.
States 4.
How do I get the monitors to come on?
Brian's going to do it.
Okay.
Why isn't she beginning her sentences with what if any?
You know how to do it? Go ahead, do it.
Because she knows how to ask a question on direct examination. That's why. Oh man. But what was the band playing? What were people drinking? What were people snacking on? I want to know. I really want to know these details that are absolutely irrelevant to this case. Kidding, I don't know. I'm glad that this is much more laser focused direct examination to get to the relevant information.
Hold on, his monitor's not on. Are your monitors on? Yes.
This one's not.
We'll turn it on.
It's on, but
Oh no.
it's green light.
I'm confused.
Let me go get the adapter.
Well, can he redo it from here while he's looking? Or do you want?
Sure, if the monitor won't just come on?
Just come on.
He's got to get the adapter. Go get the adapter.
Okay. Officer Lefleur, do you want to turn around and just look at the monitor on the wall behind you?
Doesn't matter, man.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
You got your
At least-
Yeah, I'm trying to
yes,
get it out. This stupid new truck. Are we inside with the BBMs?
Officer Lefleur, tell us what's going on in the video right now.
I'm looking for my other medic bag. I handed the individual a trauma pack for shooting, and I'm attempting to open one of the storage boxes in the back of the truck.
Who was the individual that you handed something to?
I believe it was a fire personnel that I followed in, a volunteer firefighter maybe.
And I thought I heard the word, is it BVM?
It's for CPR. It's a bag valve mask.
Valve mask.
BVM.
Okay, thank you.
So I will say that, like, you know, his testimony definitely makes him look like he's just kind of very timid and is like very unsure and doesn't want to be there and very reluctant. But at least the body cam footage shows him differently. It shows him like acting very quickly and running and rushing and there to respond to an emergency in the way that we would hope for first responders to respond to an emergency. Also, yeah, this right here, Draco Amy, thanks so much for the trigger warning. You might need to step away for a while, mute, or catch the next stream. Look after yourself. Yeah, there might be some violent imagery that we see here because of the incident itself. So him responding to it. Also, I will also point out here, I feel like this time around, I'm like giving Carrie Morrissey so many compliments because of what we just saw in the last trial. But I do want to point it out. This is a good example of how to put on video evidence, you know, body cam footage, that is relevant, you know, rather than just a dash cam driving through the snow for God knows what reason. But, you know, here, this is to set the scene, to show what's happening. And also she's pausing it to ask questions, to have him explain to the jury what's actually happening. This is what we want to see in a trial. This is how we want to see someone putting on this kind of body cam footage, this sort of video evidence, any kind of photo evidence. You know, don't just play it and have the jury sit there wondering what's happening and why they're watching it. Ask some questions about it. This is a good direct examination by Carrie Morrissey so far. She is working with a witness who is, you know, not the most charismatic, of course, but hey, you get all kinds of different personalities, and she is doing well with this witness so far. And I'm saying this as someone who's not the biggest fan of Carrie Morrissey. So, you know, just so you guys know, I'm not just giving this like glowing presentation because I absolutely love her and want to mimic her style as an attorney, as a litigator.
We need a seal. Get a seal? A seal? Seal. I got a sterile glove and a packing gloves. Okay.
I'm glad they're not showing all of the
My hand is on it. Talking? She shot her? She came in here and went across her chest. And back and went into. You want air flight? Yeah, we all went in route. Okay.
Okay.
And what are you talking about?
This is also good. I'm glad that the court TV and whatever other whoever's operating the camera here, this probably was a motion in lemonade, as many like to refer to it in this chat. But this probably was a motion in limine going into the trial to keep the media from showing the most gory aspects of this case. To include body cam footage of the actual like responding to the medical emergency itself, because that's one of those sort of salacious aspects of a trial like this. The jury, of course, is seeing every single bit of it. They have to see it. This is part of their duty to I was about to say to analyze the case and to make their determinations at the end of this trial. So, but I'm very grateful for our purposes that the public is not necessarily seeing this splashed across YouTube and elsewhere. So, yeah.
There, when you say air flight.
Helicopter that's designed to transport people that need advanced treatment faster than ambulance. It's a helicopter that air paramedics basically.
Did you call for the helicopter, or did someone else do that? Do you know?
That individual said that they had already called one, but I called one for as well.
You called also?
Yes, ma'am.
And why did you feel that it was necessary to have a helicopter arrive?
Someone who was shot across the chest. We're quite a ways out for an ambulance in reference to where the hospital is. So.
And when you say you were quite a ways out, how far away is Bonanza Creek?
From a hospital?
Sure.
running lights and sirens, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes or more.
Okay.
.32 Santa Fe, one female shot in the chest, male shot in the stomach, requesting air flight.
Requesting air flight.
I heard you there say male shot in the stomach. Is that what you said?
I'm not sure. I didn't really hear it.
Well, as you sit here today, do you recall where the other person was shot?
Somewhere in the chest
Okay,
or shoulder area.
thank you.
It's okay.
I got you right here. 2432, how many people yell at me there?
32, I got just Santa Fe medics.
In your video, sir, can you identify who the set medic is?
It's a little blurry, but I believe it's this lady, right? The one that's bent over with her blondish brown hair.
Is the monitor working now?
Yeah.
No,
Yes.
Joe. Come on, Joe.
This monitor is working now.
Oh, it is.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, do you know how to touch it to put it? There you go. Thank you. I appreciate you. You can go ahead and remove that.
Oh, I don't know how to remove it.
Can you show them how to remove it?
Push on the menu button.
Clear.
And then there's a clear deal.
Okay.
And if it's in the way, just push menu.
Do you know who these other people are that are in the room?
No, I know that that person, and somebody over here, the battalion chief, they were wearing Santa Fe medic, county fire medic shirts. So, and they came in the vehicle in front of me.
You don't know who the other people are that are in the room?
I know the other person shot, and then Halyna Hutchins, or I maybe misspelled her name or pronounced it, and then the other assistant director, and that's about it.
Okay. And you mentioned that there was a truck pulling in ahead of you.
It was a volunteer firefighter truck.
So did the first responders that we see here in this scene, did they arrive about the same time you did?
Yes.
32 Santa Fe, both approximately 140 pounds, elderly male and young female. What do you need me? No, there's... You want a BBM?
He's good. He's got cross control.
This is repeat your information. Are you flying her out? Yeah, she'll be fine.
Officer Lefleur, tell us what you're doing now and why.
I looked over and seen that they were getting the oxygen tank out. Noticed that they were using on a bag valve mask, which is more appropriate for that situation than the one that goes around their face. I'm just helping them, doing as much as I can to help.
So give us a little bit more information. What causes you to believe that the bag valve mask is more appropriate than the one that goes around your face? And when you say the one that goes around your face, what do you mean?
If the oxygen were to run out or they had to use manual breaths, they could use the bag. The other one is just something that's over their face.
Okay. And what made you think that the bag valve mask was more appropriate?
Nothing really. I just believe it's more, I don't know.
Officer Lefleur, are you trained in life-saving measures?
To an extent, yes.
Okay. Was it anything about your training that caused you to think that that would be more appropriate?
It's just what we've been trained with versus the one that was already on her.
Okay.
Gabby, can you just make sure nobody else comes in?
Yeah, we got here.
You have the ears, ma'am? Your stethoscope? Yes, they're in that bag. Right there at the top. Purple? Nope, at the top. Halyna.
Is anybody allowed to go with her in the helicopter? No.
Halyna, deep breath. Deep breath, Halyna. There you go. Deep breath. Deep breath, Halyna. Deep breath.
Be okay. Good girl. Good girl.
There you go. Good girl. Deep breath. Entrance is here. Exit's back here.
You guys,
do you have another?
Pack it?
No.
What do you guys need?
I just need another dog tag. Something for pressure. I'll take a big one.
This one?
No, this one's good.
This one?
No. Ab pad, you have an ab pad?
Underneath the right shoulder blade, the top area coming through.
You're not taking anything. All right, thank you. I just need something big. Thank you.
You got a stretcher?
Not me here, no.
Okay. Let me help him get the stretcher.
What are you doing now?
Just trying to stay busy, help clear the way for the stretcher. The ambulance is here.
Here's priority number one. Okay. Let's clearing and all this stuff out of here. Get everything in here and get it out. All right, yeah, we got air flight en route.
Not on me here. We can get it from the Halyna?
Halyna? This is Halyna Hutchins.
I will say that this, everything that I see from Alec Baldwin here in reaction to watching this footage seems entirely appropriate. Like he was there for when this all happened, when this all went down. Regardless of whether he's the defendant in this case or anybody else here, he was there, around, even if he wasn't there specifically in the room at this specific moment, if he had already walked out, to like make space or do whatever. It's still hard to watch. It's still very hard to watch. So, it seems to me at least entirely appropriate. And like I said before, I'll criticize Alec Baldwin like that. I have no problems with that. So, but yeah. So let me see. Oh, also, I missed a super chat earlier, and I'm so sorry, Jerry Roth. Thanks so much for the super chat. Did you hear Kevin Albert was put on paid leave? I did hear that. Canton PD put Kevin Albert from the Karen Reed trial on leave. I don't know. I don't know the circumstances around it beyond that, but this is very interesting. Things are happening in and around Canton, Massachusetts.
Okay. So I got the air. Thank you. On the slide that did you get all that up? I'm not gonna good. So we're gonna need to get going right away.
Officer Lefleur, have additional first responders now arrived?
Yes.
Can you give us an idea of who's on set assisting now?
So it looks like more paramedics have arrived, and Lieutenant Benavides is right there.
Okay, and do you mean this gentleman here?
Yes, ma'am.
That my cursor's on? And who was Lieutenant Benavides?
He was our day shift lieutenant at the time.
Was he a supervisor?
Yes, ma'am.
I got it through and through on her. We went through and through on her to the chest, and then you got one in the arm over there.
Everybody stop what they're doing right now. This is a crime scene. Okay, everybody stop.
Whose voice is that we're hearing?
A lot of voices.
Lieutenant Benavides.
Okay, roll it back. Roll it to the other side. One, two, three. Right underneath, cool. Really good.
Many questions back and forth between the footage and the jury.
Okay? You keep your eyes on me. Keep looking at me. All right, we got some stairs, guys. Go stairs, the first step.
So what is your understanding about where Ms. Hutchins is being taken now?
Into the back of the ambulance.
And can you explain why is she going into the back of an ambulance rather than the helicopter?
The helicopter hasn't arrived yet, and my understanding is that they have additional medicines and equipment and measures they can take inside of an ambulance.
All right, thank you.
Disconnect here. You got it? Hey, take over that. You guys want to see Vincent? 32 Santa Fe, what's ETA on the bird?
What did you just say?
I asked them ETA in the helicopter.
And who are you speaking to?
Santa Fe dispatch.
Do you recall how they responded?
It's been a minute since I watched this video, so.
All right.
We got the bird right here.
Is the helicopter now arriving?
Yes, ma'am.
What are you doing now?
Appears I'm grabbing crime scene tape.
Why are you grabbing crime scene tape?
To start the crime scene. I don't know if anybody had told me to grab the tape yet, but I knew we needed to start one.
You felt that you needed to put up crime scene tape.
Yes, ma'am. Or somebody may have asked for it.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Or somebody may have asked me for it. I'm just not too sure.
Okay. And what's crime scene tape used for?
To mark the perimeter or the inner perimeter of essentially a crime scene which they want to tape off and only allow certain people in and out.
Okay. And was that an issue in this scene?
The crime scene?
Well, cordoning off the crime scene, was that an issue here?
Yeah, it was a unique situation because of the you can't really tie crime scene tape to nothing. So I think in one point they actually used our patrol units as to tie the tape around and go to the next one.
And why is it important to cordon that off?
Just for evidence purposes, allow only certain people in and out because at this point we didn't know what was going on. So.
And were there people in that area that were not first responders?
Yes.
Approximately how many, if you recall?
I don't know. I couldn't give you a number really. There was just a lot of people on the outside that I hadn't seen originally inside the church. So.
Okay, and did you know who those people were?
No.
Okay. Do you see this person here in the gray shirt?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that a first responder?
No.
So when the crime scene tape goes up, what happens to that person?
I can't recall.
Well,
I haven't watched the video yet.
Hypothetically, is that person allowed to stay inside the crime scene?
No.
Okay. Who are the people that are allowed to stay inside the tape?
Medical and for first responders.
Okay.
We need chief.
This is in the middle of a shot, and I have live ordnance on the ceiling up there. It's safe.
Okay.
But it is here, right above here.
Okay.
Right there, that's...
Okay.
And if you get to the point where you say you want me to move...
All right.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Where's the bird?
It's right here.
What are you doing now?
I talked with the paramedics inside the ambulance, and they asked me where the helicopter was. I told him I was landing, and he asked them to bring the paramedics to them.
So you're bringing the paramedic from the helicopter to the ambulance?
Yes.
All right.
We got approximately 23-year-old female in the back of the ambulance right now. Gunshot underneath the right arm. Went through all the way to the back left. Can you carry this back, please, sir? I got it. You got it? This one's priority. Hey guys. Everything over there? I got it right here. So, we don't have to go in here. Guys, just get a couple IDs. They're not sure whether they're IOs or not. You got the IO stuff? Can you open your eyes for me? Awesome. Yep, there. Yeah, up there. Work on the IO. I'm going to come around. That's it. If I could just have you guys step over there for us, okay? Can I have you guys get over there for us? We're going to have to gather everybody up, get everybody's names, everybody who's on scene, okay?
What are you doing now?
Just trying to think what's next. I think I'm putting one of the pilot's headgear inside the ambulance on the other side of the door.
Why are you telling those people to move?
Just to start to gather people up because they're just standing around the church where the said incident happened.
Why didn't you do that when you initially got there?
Just went in and made sure that medical that people were receiving medical treatment, and then slowly go with the flow, see what it could do next.
Are you trained to take action to save lives before moving witnesses around?
Yes, ma'am.
How's it going, sir? I believe you guys will be taking this one.
Going in the bird then? Did she go in the bird?
No, not yet. They did an IVs, get an IO, and then they're going to take in the bird.
They're coming out, watch yourself.
They're moving it from this one? Yeah. Yeah.
A couple of them still.
Is that your stuff? And whose jacket is that?
Joel's.
Joel's? Okay.
It's got his phone. Hey, be careful, it is bloody.
Okay.
It's got his phone, it's got his other stuff in it.
Okay, well, we're going to just keep it here. So,
Even his phone?
Officer Lefleur, this woman who's speaking right now, she's not a police officer, right?
No.
Was she employed with the fire department?
No, she was their set medic, I'm guessing.
When you say set medic, do you mean she's the medic on the movie set?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, he was wearing it. Where's his phone at?
I don't know.
Do you have any idea why movie sets would have medical personnel on scene?
Probably for safety reasons. Someone closer than the paramedics or fire department.
For safety reasons?
Yeah.
Phone.
Anybody have Joel's phone? Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Yeah, how can we help you? I just need your IDs, and then have you guys step outside and wait for the investigators to get here. Okay? Cool.
Any idea who these guys are?
Just more people involved with the movie set.
Movie set employees,
Yeah.
was that your impression?
Yes, ma'am.
And who's the props guy? Who's in charge of props? She has green and purple hair. You can't miss her. Okay. I was here when it happened. You were here when it happened? Yes, sir.
Who else was here when it happened?
My dad was the camera operator.
How many people you think were in here when it happened?
3, maybe 4.
4?
Maybe.
Okay. So 2 more other than you 2?
Reed, as soon as I see him, he
Reed?
camera operator. Reed, yes sir.
Okay, who else?
Reed Russell was here. Alec Baldwin was the actor on set that pulled the trigger.
Alec Baldwin?
Yes sir.
Where's he at?
We got one.
Yeah, you help me find him?
Yes sir. Baldwin's right there on the cell phone with the cowboy.
Okay. How's it going, sir? So my understanding, you were in the room when someone was shot?
Holding the gun, yeah.
Okay, alrighty.
What do you need?
Well, I know your name, so
Pursuant to the stipulation, I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead. Very good. I want to make sure this is the right part. Okay.
Maybe we can.
to hang out, okay?
Okay.
Let me get with my lieutenant and see where we want you to hang out, okay?
Whatever you want to do. Whatever.
Yes, sir. All right, give me just a second. LT.
So apparently I was not given the appropriate redaction. You want me to jump ahead 5 seconds now? What? I need to know what to do, or I just press play. What do I do?
You want to pull the trigger? You want me to have him sit tight or?
Yeah, you have to sit tight.
Sit tight in the
I
unit?
have the armor in here. This is all their stuff. I have the gun used is in there.
And I got the 2 people that were in the room.
Okay.
You may have Alec Baldwin take a seat in the back of my unit or?
No, we know where he's at. We know who he is.
Yeah.
We just need to say, is he in a trailer?
No, he's right there in the gray and black.
Okay. All right. So try to keep him away from everybody.
Okay.
Have him talk to anybody.
Okay. I can just have him sit. I can sit with him in my unit. That's fine. Okay. Okay.
Officer Lefleur, at this point in time, what's your intention?
I was going to go back to where Mr. Baldwin was and then escort him to my unit. When I got there, I realized my unit is over here being used as a post for the crime scene.
So what did you do when you realized that?
Just had him sit where he was and had everybody just hang out there, started writing down people's names.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about any lag issues. Occasionally my internet does get a little bit laggy, a little bit unstable. So occasionally you'll see something like that. Hopefully it doesn't happen very often though. But it does happen from time to time. So if you're seeing that, if it's like the court feed is like a little bit spotty for a bit, the video of it, just know that it'll pass. It'll get stable again at some point.
She said to me, an empty gun. You can do the boat. You're ready to shoot. You want to do steps. Yep. You're
drugs.
What are these people doing?
Seems like they're talking about what happened.
Now, as a law enforcement officer, is that something that concerns you?
Yes.
And why? Why does that concern you?
They could be, one person could be telling them what they saw and mess up what they have to say, what they saw. So
Let me.
it could essentially coerce testimony, I guess. People would say the same thing because the other person said it, rather than saying their own opinion or own view of what they saw.
Okay.
So this is the prosecution getting ahead of some bad facts. She's pointing out the things that are problematic for the investigation. The fact that Alec Baldwin is there talking with other people, from the crew about what happened inside the church, because this is an issue potentially because people can start lining up their testimony. And so this is one of the big criticisms that came out during the Hannah Gutierrez-Reed trial, was the fact that there were only so many officers that were responding at the beginning with 100, 200 people on set, and they didn't corral the people that were there in the church and corral them away from everyone else, but then also separate them from each other. Now the first responders or the police officers did sort of respond in the first trial that this was just the circumstances that were the circumstances, right? They only had so many people that were available to respond to this. And so this was just a very strange situation through no one's fault. But the defense rightly points out that still has an impact on the investigation potentially. So, but this is the prosecution pointing this out to get ahead of bad facts before the defense jumps in on cross-examination to grill this officer about it. Just because, thanks so much for the super chat question. Could prosecution bring up John Eric Hexum as a known risk in the industry, even if they don't bring up Brandon Lee regarding Baldwin's mindset? I think that I don't know. I don't know. I don't know about that one. I know that they did specifically address Brandon Lee and the Crow. And I think that all got kept out in the in the pretrial hearings, if I'm not mistaken, folks. If you watched the hearings at length and you watched more than I did, let me know if I'm correct with that or incorrect with that. But yeah, my understanding is they probably are not able to bring that kind of stuff in. To say that like he knew about this kind of stuff ahead of time and that should have affected him. I mean, I would think that would impact his state of mind of what he knew, what he didn't know, what he should have known. I don't know. But I think the judge kept all of that out.
Mr. Baldwin, who's the director on scene?
The guy that was shot.
The guy that was shot?
He's in.
Okay.
I think he's in the ambulance.
Do you guys have a production car? Or?
There's an AD. Name is Dave. I'm happy to stay right here and do everything that he's.
Well, my lieutenant just wants you to stay away from everybody and not to talk to nobody. So I was
wait right here.
We can wait right here and have everybody step back, or we can wait in the back and patrol you. But I prefer to not put you there. Okay.
You want something? You want water or something now? I want to find props to get a cigarette.
So, why did you let Mr. Baldwin sit there instead of putting him in some vehicle and separating him from the other witnesses?
Like I said, my unit was clear across being used as a post, and just because I didn't know what we had right there, came to maintain cooperation with people involved.
Well, it sounds like you gave him an option. You let him choose. Is that right?
Yeah, he wanted to stay right there, and I figured if I could keep him there, I didn't see a big problem with it until later on when people were talking and whatnot.
And did you give Mr. Baldwin instructions about whether or not he could speak to people?
I did tell him to stop talking.
And did you give instructions to the other witnesses that were around?
I didn't tell them, but I told them he had to sit there and not talk to nobody.
Okay.
putting up that medium. We'll take it.
Sure you don't want a cigar?
For sure. Hey,
Yes, sir. Right, I'm right there. The car is Alec's vehicle. You want to put him in there? Mr. Baldwin, is that your car? Yeah. We can wait in there.
You want me to stay here?
We can wait in your car if you want to.
I can't smoke in the car.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, we can hang out right here then.
Is Joe gone? They both gone?
But well, they're still working on the female. If you haven't seen the helicopter take off, then they're not gone yet.
If you know, Officer Lefleur, why hadn't the helicopter taken off yet?
I don't know exactly why, but my guess is they have to stabilize the patient before they can put them in the air.
In the air, okay.
And can choose not to object.
Inquiry with the where you need
Why are you just standing there?
Just standing with Mr. Baldwin, allowing him to smoke a cigarette, making
And
sure.
why is it important for you to be standing there?
Essentially, he's detained, not free to leave. So I'm there with him.
So 3710 interrupts, but that's free. Trying to say myself there, 6'5", 75.
Right there, he took his radio off, but that's our first AV.
That one right there?
Talking to him. That sheriff's car with the gray hair kind of in the
Okay.
shirt.
Okay.
Thanks, Dave. Hey, I got an officer over here by now. Great.
Why do you have these two gentlemen standing over there that we can see? What is there something important about them?
The guy in the gray I had him stand over there because he was inside the room when I had first got at the church. And the other guy in the brown apparently was in the church too. So I just wanted everybody who was in the church in one area so we could easily be found.
So you wanted everyone that was in the church in one area.
Yes, ma'am.
And are we looking at that area?
To the left of Baldwin is where majority of everybody was. Yes.
Okay. And those were the witnesses that were in the church?
From what I was told, yes.
Okay.
So, Mr. Baldwin, how many people were in the room when it happened?
I don't remember. It's a crew.
It's a crew?
You've got some people, but a lot of crews outside, inside that building. He'll tell you.
Okay.
He's the one that knows what was going on. He's asking how many people were in the room at the time.
How's it going, sir? Deputy Lefleur. How many people were in the room at the time?
Dozen?
Six?
7.
Officer Lefleur, who's this gentleman who's speaking now in the blue jean shirt?
From what I was told, he was on one of the other directors.
6 or 7? I need a definite answer.
I don't know.
Okay. So I got one here, the 2 that were injured, that makes 3, and then these 2 gentlemen, 4, 5. So who would be the other 2?
Yeah, he's got
more than 6.
Supervisor, I keep track of the narrative and how many square. I can tell you who's in the room.
Okay. Were you in the room?
I was at the door.
You were at the door? Can I get your ID?
Do you know whether or not the person in the jean shirt was inside the church and witnessed the incident?
I do not know.
Okay, why don't you come on over to the back of Three T to T4. I have 380s for concussion. Just really down everybody screaming. Oh, he was inside.
Does it appear to you that Mr. Baldwin is speaking to the other witnesses?
I think he was talking about who would know who's in the room.
Okay.
I can't really hear it. And then apparently the guy's son was working there as well.
Okay. Is this an ideal way to separate someone from witnesses?
I'll have to look at it. Probably not, but that's what happened.
Okay. Understood.
You're right at the door? Do you have an ID on you, sir? As of right now, her status is questionable. That's why we called the air light. Like, where were you at, sir?
I was right behind him.
Right behind him? Okay.
Yeah, I was right behind him right when it happened.
All right. So just have you guys hang out for me right here. We'll get someone to get your statement in just a second, okay?
And then they cleared the gun outside after on his request, and I witnessed them clear it and saw the bullets.
Okay. So
the one that was missing, the one that fired, we don't know, but all the other ones were proper. They had loads.
Officer Lefleur, does it seem to you right now that they're talking about the incident?
Seems like they're talking about the gun that was used in the incident.
All right.
They were low flames.
They had loads. They didn't know. They did their shake test before they put the gun.
So yeah, she's definitely getting ahead of bad facts, talking about how these guys are obviously talking about the incident in front of this officer right here, talking about it with one another, right? The defense is likely to still pounce on this regardless, but the fact that she's pointing it out is helpful to sort of take some of that sting out.
Officer, do you know what this conversation is about that we're watching right here?
Something about a shake test. I don't know. Maybe the rounds, dummy rounds, maybe.
Okay.
I'm not too entirely sure.
And I will say, this is a very natural reaction for people that have just been through something traumatic to want to talk about it with one another, with the other people that were in the room with them, in the room where it happened, But that's a very natural thing to want to do. So it's not necessarily a criticism on like these particular witnesses, but it's just to say that in terms of an investigation, though, it's not what you want to be seeing.
Do you agree with me that, was Mr. Baldwin supposed to be talking about the incident?
No, ma'am.
Does he appear to be doing it anyway?
Yes, ma'am.
After the rehearsing, you give me the empty gun. And we don't use it to be able to load. It's hot until we're ready to shoot. So we put the earplugs in. You all right? I'm worried about her. Yeah, well, me as well, but what's your situation? She's stable now. You get her in there.
As a counterpoint to that last question, though, Carrie Morrissey saying, well, was Alec Baldwin supposed to be talking about it? No, ma'am. But I also don't hear this officer like cutting him off or cutting any of these other witnesses off for that matter by saying, hey, like, I understand that you've been through something, but we can't have you guys talking to one another about the incident. Not until we have, not until we have statements from all of you. So please, kindly wait. I know it's hard, but kindly wait until police have taken your statements individually. I don't hear him interrupting anyone either. So okay, sure. You can put blame on any of these people, but also they've just been through something really, really horrible. So it's natural for them to want to talk about it.
Yeah, both of them took it in the shoulder. Hers came out the other shoulder, which is why it's not good. His, the shoulder blade stopped it. So shattered. There's basically a rotting. It's a blank, but because I think it was based on the sound of how much ringing I had, I think it was a half.
Officer, are they still talking about the incident?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a reason that you didn't stop them since you told them not to?
Good question.
I think as time goes on, I tell them to stop.
A bit of water. And that's
Okay.
the barrels. But who knows what else is in the room? Four is my other hand.
You're in the room?
Effects crew.
Okay. Get your ID, sir.
That's what I said. I think it was more than 6 or 7 guys. I think it was about 8.
You see this gentleman over here on the left?
Yes, ma'am.
Any reason to believe he was inside the room at the time?
I'm not sure at this point.
Okay.
Were you in the room too, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay.
She was breathing. She had a clear lungs. And that means it for me. But he potentially has got hair in his right. It's not stuck here.
Where did he put them? He went over this.
He took it to the right shoulder. His right shoulder blade stopped it, but they're hearing stuff in his head.
And where did she went after that?
They take the machine gun. As soon as they're allowed to. So they'll stabilize both. And then once the sheriff says you're good to go, we'll let them go.
And she's going to you and
So she basically they're trying to stabilize her vital signs enough for the flight.
Sure.
And administer any kind of narcotics or anything they need, blood thinners, that may be. Then they'll load her up in the helicopter and they'll fly her there. I believe the other ambulance is on the other side, and he seems to be doing better than she was, so
Absolutely.
they might drive him in an ambulance.
I heard him wave off the other friend, so
and where did they put her? She went out and put that into her, right?
both of them took it in the shoulder.
When I was up with Joel, I didn't see nothing on him before it hit the ambulance.
You just went over.
Yeah,
I ran out.
I came back in the cubes and I was helping him and I didn't see nothing. I was asking if he was alright. He couldn't hear me.
You and him at the trauma hospital.
Let's go to St. Vincent's. They're both trauma ones.
Thanks for the information. I was curious.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna step away and call my wife.
Yeah, no problem.
I got more out.
Get him out of my life. There's nobody in this life. He walked around. I want him to put a camera here. I want you.
Officer Lefleur, have more first responders now arrived?
Off to your right, you can see. There it is. Off to your right, you can see more patrol units showing up. This deputy showed up, but this corporal had been there for a minute.
And approximately how long have you now been on scene?
According to my body cam, a little over 25 minutes.
Okay.
Hey, Corporal. I got 7 people there in the room when it happened, all their IDs, so. Okay.
You know, brought that down. I'm not sure what the CID come out there.
It's okay.
At that point in time, what was your understanding of how many people were in the room and witnessed it?
I believe I said 7.
Okay. Do you know whether or not that turned out to be true?
I think there was actually more. I wrote all the people who said that they were in the room in my report.
Okay.
Hey, sir. Okay. And I'm just hanging out with him because, yeah, he's the one who pulled the trigger. So.
Okay. Yeah, he kind of, sorry, I was trying to set things up a while ago. And,
Whatever you can. What are you smoking? You got one on you?
You got a notepad? Ready? All right. Do you have a notepad?
Officer Lefleur, at this point in time, I know he's no longer in the frame, but the gentleman in the blue denim shirt, do you know whether or not he was in the room at the time?
I don't recall if he was in the room or not.
Okay.
I know there was some director or whatnot there.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have mine either. Yeah, so I start. Yeah, I know. It came off when I was given, trying to pack the wounds. Yeah. Okay.
Officer Lefleur, does it look like Mr. Baldwin is speaking to a potential witness?
He looks like he's talking to the guy who says his name is one of the directors, yes.
Okay. Is that what you had in mind when you asked Mr. Baldwin not to speak to anyone?
No.
Do you know what they're talking about?
I couldn't hear what they were talking about. I did hear him ask him what cigarettes he was smoking and if he could have one. So.
Definitely has a bunch of loose cards in there.
Oh, geez. All right.
Or do you want to just try some pages off?
No, because I'm going to be writing quite a bit. Everybody's in the room. I mean, I have my phone on me. Yeah. It's all right. I'll just, yeah, all right now.
Do you see the gentleman in the denim shirt gesturing? You want me to back up?
Yeah, which one? Are we talking about this gentleman?
Yeah. Do you know what he's gesturing?
No, it looks like he picks up his hand. Now that you play it back, it looks like he's shaking his hand.
And had you seen him do that previously?
No, not until just now.
I thought you testified earlier about a shake test.
The gentleman was talking about a shake test.
Okay.
He was also gesturing with it earlier, but that's fine.
But I had not seen the director do it until reviewing the footage now.
Okay.
My eyes aren't always exactly where the body cam's pointed, so.
Absolutely. When you tell people not to talk about the incident, do you have an expectation that they'll follow your instructions?
Yes, ma'am.
Does it look like they're following your instructions?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Officer Lefleur, I'm going to stop the video there. What else did you do on scene that day?
I helped essentially just wait with other witnesses, I guess, or people that wanted to give a statement or they needed a statement from at a different location. It was their base camp is what they called it.
So you needed to take statements from people that were at another location? Is that what you said?
No, we took people from essentially where we had them, and they took them down to their base camp. And that's where they started interviews.
And the people that you take to base camp, are those the same people that we see here in the video?
I believe so. Those people, and I don't know how many people they ended up interviewing.
Did at any point in time, did Mr. Baldwin tell you that he didn't pull the trigger of the gun?
I believe he told me he was holding the gun. I believe in the beginning when I was leaving the church, one of the guys said that Baldwin had pulled the trigger. So just off of what was told.
And I know that this sounds ridiculous, but we have to follow some jurisdictional rules. Do you see Mr. Baldwin in this frame here?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you point him out, please? And do you see that same gentleman in the courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you point him out, please?
He's sitting in the middle with the glasses.
Okay. Anything else that you did of import that you can think of that you think the jury should hear about?
I think that's about it.
How long were you on scene, if you recall?
From when I got there was, I don't know, about 10 hours maybe or so. I was there until dark.
You were there for 10 hours.
Yeah, until they were done interviewing people.
Is that typical?
It is if that's what they need to be done. So
Okay. Your Honor, just for the record, we would ask that the record reflect that Officer Lefleur has identified the defendant.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll pass the witness.
All right, cross-examination.
May I proceed?
Sorry, Mr. Spiro.
Oh, sorry.
Get that out of your way.
Always fine when the court interrupts me.
This might be rough for this
May I
witness.
proceed?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. When you got to the scene, Mr. Baldwin walked up to you and said, I was holding a gun. He blurted it out, right?
yes,
And in fact, he was very shocked, if you could picture Alec Baldwin in a pale state, very unsure of himself. You could say an actor out of character. Fair?
sure.
Object to the formal question. It is Mr. Spiro testifying in the question. Okay. May we approach?
Oh, judge is responding to these snide bars already. This is just, I think Morrissey is just in a habit of arguing from her chair like this. So the judge is, but good on this judge for for laying down the rules of the courtroom. So, this is cross-examination. He's allowed to cross-examine. Of course, that can get into testifying, but yeah.
When you saw Mr. Baldwin, he looked very shocked. If you could picture Mr. Baldwin in a pale state, like unsure of himself, you could say an actor out of character. Is that a fair description?
Sure.
Yeah. So he's literally repeating like the exact question that he asked him before, just to kind of prove a point to the jury that he won on that objection.
And he said to you, "I'm here, whatever you want to do," right?
Yes.
He said to you at one point, "Where should I go?" Right?
Yes.
And he also pointed out to you who the director was on scene who was hit in the shoulder, right?
I believe so. Yes. Inquired about him.
And he also asked you how she was doing, right? Meaning Miss Hutchins, right?
Yes.
I don't remember you being asked about that on direct, were you?
Okay.
And you mean asked by the state?
Yeah.
Objection relevance?
Yeah.
Overruled.
So I want to take a step back. The dispatch that came over to your radio.
Okay, so he is bringing some early spice. So, he's kind of calling out the prosecution, flagging for the jury, like, well, the prosecution, left this important detail out, that Alec Baldwin also asked about how Halyna Hutchins was actually doing, at this time. And that didn't come out in your direct examination. Which, sure, okay, that's fair. This is something that oftentimes happens on cross-examination. You get some new information, and when the prosecution really, really neglects it, like we saw in the Karen Reed trial, it looks like the defense is the side that's actually bringing the story forward. But that kind of a detail, like, okay, that's fine. Just ask the question. This is getting a little snarky, a little early for my liking.
Before you got to the scene was a dispatch for an accidental shooting by a prop gun, correct?
I believe that's what was told to me, yes.
Okay. And you've testified to that previously, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the dispatch report, that you received that wording, accidental discharge, several times, right?
I believe so.
Okay. So I want to ask you, how come when you described it today in court, how come you didn't include the word accident when you testified before this jury?
I'm not one to say if it was an accident or not. Just there to
It's a fair response.
initially respond to it, and then the detectives determine whether or not it was an accident.
Well, sure, but every other time you've been asked about this, you've said it was an accident. And now today at the trial of Alec Baldwin, when you're talking to this jury, you left that word out. Isn't that true?
Not intentionally, no.
Pointing out an inconsistency.
Did you meet with the prosecutors before you testified here today?
Just briefly in the room outside for them to tell me who was in order of what witness.
You've discussed your testimony previously with Ms. Morrissey, correct? Before today?
Just in a pretrial interview, yes.
We've talked about your lapel that was on. It's true, right, that the lapel is actually mandatory,
Yes.
right? And so they came to the officers, passed a law, and told you had to wear your lapel, right?
Yes.
And the way it works is it secures all of these statements, and when you're done wearing it for the day, you go back to the station, you log it in, and then it exists, right?
Essentially, yeah, but it's more complex than that. It uploads on itself.
Oh, it self-uploads so that it maintains itself?
Yes.
Okay. And you then talked a little bit about the securing of the scene, and you talked about crime scene tape going up, right?
Yes.
But as you just told this jury, at the time, you don't know whether this is an accident or not, right?
Yes.
It's not like a crime scene tape is some evidence of a crime, right?
And whether it was an accident or a crime scene is still essential.
And you've been very candid that you made some mistakes at the scene, right?
Yes.
And that you've learned since then about some of these mistakes, right?
Yes.
You've said hindsight's 20/20, right?
Yes.
And you can Monday morning quarterback decisions, but you made them in the field, right?
Yes.
And you've said that based on your training and experience, you know that if witnesses are left to speak to each other, they can taint each other's memories, right?
Yes.
And sometimes that's incidental and accidental, right?
Yes.
And sometimes it's purposeful, right?
Depends on who's there, yes.
Well, if you were with somebody and somebody was talking to you about the 911 call, right? And they kept saying to you over and over, it wasn't an accident, it wasn't an accident. And then you testify and you leave out the word accident. That could be an example of taint, couldn't it?
Sure.
And also non-witnesses can taint people's memories too. You agree with me?
I guess.
Well, you know, at one point in your testimony previously, you had said that there was a lawyer on the scene that was talking to some of the people that were on the scene.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. And if that lawyer told somebody on the scene, I think your understanding is that could have tainted their view of their memory, right?
Essentially, yes.
Mr. Baldwin never asked to speak to that lawyer, did he?
I'm not to my recollection.
And, you know, then you went on and you said, you know, that you had told Mr. Baldwin not to speak to the other witnesses. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
And I think you were asked approximately 5 times why Mr. Baldwin was disobeying your orders. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
Okay. But in the lapel video that we just saw, you're not going up to Mr. Baldwin or these witnesses, but get out of here. Get out of here. I'm an officer. You got to separate. You don't do that, right?
Nope.
That is a fair point. We pointed that out too.
And also in that video, you can see a lot of these people are coming over to Mr. Baldwin, right?
Yes.
One of them comes over and shakes his hand, right?
Yes.
Have you ever seen that in all of your experience? Somebody commit a homicide and everybody and all the witnesses are on the scene, circling around the person, shaking his hand and talking to him about what happened. Have you ever seen that in your entire career?
No.
And then you went on to say, well, you didn't put him in the cruiser. You didn't put him in the cruiser because your cruiser was being used. Was I guess the reason that you gave? Was that, did I understand that right?
My patrol unit was being actively used as a post on the other side of the field for crime scene.
When you say a post, you mean like it goes somewhere else and you put the tape around it? Is that?
The side mirror was wrapped around with crime scene tape.
Uh-huh. You mean, there were also another dozen officers on the scene that day that had police cars if they wanted to put Mr. Baldwin in it at any point, right?
Yep.
Okay. And in fact, Mr. Baldwin later on drives himself to the precinct and goes and speaks to the police, right?
I'm not too sure how he got there, but he did get there.
Well, he wasn't under arrest, right?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And so you use this word detained. When Ms. Morrissey asked you, well, were you detaining Mr. Baldwin? Do you remember that question?
AirPod. Hang on.
Yes.
Isn't it true that even today, years later, no police officer has ever arrested Mr. Baldwin or detained him in a police car? True?
I don't know.
The police department, the Santa Fe Police Department, has never arrested Mr. Baldwin.
Not the
Back
Santa
to
Fe
the
Police
form of
Department.
question, asked and answered.
Morrissey is really going to be pushing this rule. The whole no snide bars rule. She's already testing it, and the judge just decided to give a ruling on that objection as opposed to making her come forward to talk about it. I don't know how long this rule is going to be lasting in this trial if we're already on the first witness and the first cross-examination. Also, Sandy, thank you so much for gifting 10 Legalbytes memberships. So kind and generous of you once again for gifting 10 of these this time. Andrew Lawson, Rita Venegas, Gamer Ducko, Karina Richard, Colin Marie Bain, Spider, Melissa Mitchell, Sable Marquette, Naslin Santana, and Beth, you've all been gifted memberships by Sandy. So welcome or welcome back to Bike Club. So glad to have you here. And yeah, Sandy, thank you so much for that, for helping to support the channel. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So much generosity today, you guys. But I will say, let me know what you guys think about the tone of this defense attorney on cross-examination. Does it feel like he's coming in too hot? I kind of feel like he is maybe a little bit here. I would have liked to see him kind of like warm up into it first, but I don't know. People might disagree on that. I'm not sure. I'm not so sure that I'm loving his tone on this cross-examination. I don't know. Maybe I'll change my mind. We got to keep watching.
And one of the things that you do as an officer on the scene is you observe demeanor, right?
Yes.
And you spent 10 hours on the scene, I think I heard you say, right?
Yes.
You got to see the people of Rust that day live, right?
Yes.
And the truth of the matter is that you took it as a way how everybody was acting, and that the individual who claimed to have been holding the firearm was still there, that there was the way he was, his demeanor was that there wasn't any intention behind the act, as you could say. Isn't that true?
I wouldn't say there was no intention. I don't know the individual's intentions, but his demeanor was sad, upset.
Okay, well, it's not just his demeanor being sad and upset, right? Okay, we'll move that to the side. And I understand you're not a mind reader, right? Correct?
Yes.
Okay. All you can do is look at the people and look at how they're interacting and make your own judgments, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you do that as a police officer to try to figure out how to interact with a scene. True?
Yes.
Okay, and isn't it true that the way you took it, how everybody was acting, and that the individual who claimed to have been holding the firearm was still there, that there was the way he was, his demeanor was that there wasn't any intention behind the act, as you could say. Isn't that true?
Again, the wording you're using, I wouldn't say I had any clue of whose intention was what, but he was sad and upset.
Okay, well, let's play. I'm going to play his statement to that effect. Can you cue that up, please? If that's okay with the court. He's saying he didn't say that he did. I'm going to impeach him.
I don't think he said he didn't.
Well, you want me to clarify that?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you claiming that you didn't say that?
Rephrase what you said?
Sure. Dispatch said it was an accidental shooting by a prop gun. So I didn't know if there was any. I took it as the way how everybody was acting, and that the individual who claimed to have been holding the firearm was still there, that there was the way he was, his demeanor was that there wasn't any intention behind the act, as you could say,
Again, I wouldn't say I knew what his intention was.
I understand that. What I'm asking you now, okay, is did you in fact say those words that I just asked you?
At what time? The Gutierrez or a PTI?
Yes.
I may have.
Okay. You don't deny saying that?
No.
The thing that's hard about this is it's such a long statement that he's trying to impeach him on that it's kind of hard to just follow, even just like listening, not being him, but being someone else, the objective observer that is just watching all of this unfold. It's just kind of confusing. Like, what is he asking? What's the prior statement that he's comparing this testimony to? It's a little bit clunky and weird right now. So, it's not exactly going the way that the defense attorney wants this to be going. Also, Coach Fides, I think. Thanks for the super chat. Isn't this the wrong cross to grill like this? Why not wait for talking about what happens on a set? Yeah, it feels like he's being very aggressive with someone who's not matching the tone for it, which, I will say defense attorneys have a lot more that they can get away with in terms of tone and aggression. They are the ones that are defending an individual who is, being brought under by the weight of the state. So like, you can accept more kind of aggression from a defense attorney than say a prosecution attorney, generally speaking. But I still think that it works best when it's measured against the type of witness that you've got in front of you. Like, just as an example, Alan Jackson, in the Karen Reed trial, and David Yannetti, both of them seemed to have some nuance as to which tool to use with which cross-examination. Some of them, they would come down really hard, but then some, they would be much softer. They would know when to use aggression, when to use softness. And that just kind of comes with experience, I guess, but not to say that these attorneys aren't experienced. I mean, these are high profile attorneys here. It could just be that they are sort of Hollywood attorneys, so to speak. And that's the other thing about this level of aggression here, is that this is not just an attorney that's representing a defendant. This is an attorney that's representing Alec Baldwin, who is a very well-known actor. You know, he may not be an A-list actor. You know, in the last trial, Carrie Morrissey referred to him as like a B-list actor at best or something like that. But like, he's still a very well-known actor, and he's from Hollywood, and the jury might have their own ideas about Hollywood and actors and high profile actors or well-known, actors. They might have their own opinions about specifically Alec Baldwin too, which all of that would have come out during the jury selection. But, even if they don't think that that's something that is going to consciously affect them, it could still be an unconscious thing that kind of gets triggered when you have an attorney that is acting in this kind of a way. Like I said before, like earlier in this stream, you can have certain behaviors by the attorney get attributed to a particular client as well. And that may or may not be fair, but this kind of stuff does happen. Heather Miller, thanks so much for the super chat. It's probably just me, but I feel like his snark is directed more towards Morrissey, not the officer testifying. That is fair. And interpretations can 100% differ. So there might be jurors who feel just like you do on this. Sandy, a member for 22 months. Thank you so much for being a member for so long, and almost 2 years now. And also one of our awesome mods. Thanks for the member chat. Alita is close to 250K. Please subscribe. Oh, thank you so much. Yes. So we are actually well within striking distance. Last I checked, we're like about 800 away from 250,000. So it would be amazing to hit that sooner rather than later. So later. So if you are new here and you haven't done so already, consider subscribing, and you can see more trials and more interesting legal content and all that kind of stuff moving forward into the future. Thanks so much for this, Sandy. Okay, let's get back to the testimony.
Sure.
Okay, I'm gonna jump ahead for this sidebar.
I'm just going to ask you,
Okay.
Did you say that statement that I read?
If you're reading the statement and it says my name next to it, then I more likely said it. I just don't recall when.
And one of the other things that happened that day that I don't think we've talked about is you spoke to a witness who told you that a woman named Sarah was crying and shaking and going through the bullets and saying, "I don't know how it got in there."
Objection, hearsay.
I'm asking the witness if he had that information.
He's making the statement, the hearsay statement is coming in.
Do you know whether anybody at the scene was, before you got there, shaking and going through the bullets and saying, "I don't know how it got in there"?
I don't know.
Okay. If we could refresh the witness with his lapel, and I would ask that can I put it up on just his screen?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't think you can do that.
I would object because that's not proper refreshment. We don't refresh in front of the jurors. That's my objection.
What do you mean?
Maybe
Well,
go
if
to a
we're
sidebar.
refreshing,
You know what? We're going to take a lunch break real quick, and we're going to be back at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Please don't talk among yourselves.
Rise to the jury.
In 20 minutes. Okay. So, all right. So we're going to have a short break. All right, let's see if there's going to be anything between the attorneys and the judge here. Okay, it's all sidebar. Sidebar. Okay, so yeah, we have a full return on the snide bars here. That that decision by the judge to eliminate the snide bars has not lasted long at all. So okay, so let's get some questions really quick, and then we are going to end this stream. It will not replay. It'll redirect directly into the afternoon stream. So that's going to start in like 20 minutes. So let's try to get through these questions really quick. We'll all take a quick break, and then we'll get into the next one. So I'll see you guys in the next stream. But please do hang around for some questions here. Okay. Brimbino, Legalbytes, are they allowed to bring up the verdict in the HGR trial? Also, if HGR testifies, who do you think she would help or hurt in terms of their case? I think they can testify that she was in fact convicted. I think I might need to phone a friend on that one, to be completely honest with you. I want to make sure that what I'm saying is accurate, but I think they can. And then who would she help or hurt? I think she would help Baldwin more than anything because of her. I mean, the role that she played in the whole thing is very material. So I don't know. Yeah, I think she would probably help Baldwin more. Sue B, question: did he take speech lessons from Lally? No. I don't think so. I think he's doing better than Lally. Life on Makeup question: do you think Morrissey heard about her snide bars and decided to tone it down and just be direct instead of sassy? She's far more likable this time around, IMO. It could be. I mean, it's wise to listen to some of the commentary, at least, maybe not everything, but when you're part of a high profile trial, for sure. Times Legalbytes from opening. P team seems focused on Trigger versus Hammer and in reference to Alec interview, perhaps thinking he is lying, so proof of bad actor hiding badness. Can interview be evidence? The interview absolutely can be evidence. I actually did see a motion by the defense actually to try to get an out of state subpoena. This was like within the last week from ABC for some of these other interviews. And also, I think Alec Baldwin's interview as well. So I have a feeling it's going to be coming up. Genergy, Legalbytes, Baby Bites will be so proud of their cool mama being an all-star YouTuber. Well, you never know. You know, kids when kids grow up with with things that are very familiar, it becomes much more routine, I guess. We'll see. Times Legalbytes, what would he be charged with for director, or if set was near hospital and she lived? Nothing, and maybe a civil suit only. Yeah, I think so, because you can't have like attempted involuntary manslaughter, right? There's no attempt at anything here. And that's usually like, you know, if you try to murder someone, you get attempted murder if they survive. So Jerry Roth, why is Bowles there? Because Hannah Gutierrez-Reed is coming up a lot in this trial, and so he's there to undoubtedly ensure that he can be there to represent her interests and make sure those don't get trampled when other people in the room have every interest of just like throwing her under the bus for their own purposes. Melody Sinar, who's to say they weren't lending comfort to each other after a traumatic event? I completely agree. I think that it's a very human response to want to talk about something right after they have gone through something. But for purposes of an investigation, though, that's an issue. LK Rydan, Legalbytes, is it just me, or do the cops seem intimidated by the fact that there are celebrities present? They seem reluctant. I think this guy just comes across as very junior. I don't, you know, and overall just overwhelmed perhaps. It could have something to do with the fact that this is Hollywood, this is Alec Baldwin. I don't know. Or maybe it's just because he is a newbie. I don't know. Baz 80s, I need more information about the charges and what constitutes guilt. Legalbytes, have you / will you do a video breaking the charges down and what needs to be proven? I did do a primer video where I talked about the charges here and what the prosecution actually needs to prove. So if you haven't seen it, it's there's a link in the description below. Debbie Faison Cook, Legalbytes, have you seen the witness list? There was a rumor that Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren were going to testify. I have seen it. They are not on it. There are no high profile actors to speak of on either side of the witness list in this particular case. I thought that was very interesting. But unless there's some sort of a rebuttal that because somebody's been invoked somehow, I guess, that would be, how someone might come in if they're not on a witness list. But yeah, no high profile actors here. LK Ryden, Legalbytes, KM needs to adopt my brother's way of making my dad stop hitting things back. Got my ADHD from my dad. When he hit himself on them, he would spray water on dad. Would work here too. just spray her with like a cat. Just spray Morrissey with a spray bottle every time she starts to get into snide bars. Yeah, that's I think that would work. That's funny. And Dionysia Jaclo, Legalbytes, I was reading the KR verdict slip. What's the difference between manslaughter and homicide? Silly question. It's different levels of what you need to prove in terms of primarily mental state. Really, that's the biggest difference between those. And then there's also a difference in terms of how many years in prison that you would be facing or could be facing if you are convicted of those. So not a silly question at all, but it's basically like, it's a for varying levels of, from murder all the way down to involuntary manslaughter, there are differing levels of intent that's necessary in order to prove it. Okay. I think we've got all of these. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you to everyone for joining me during the stream. All the folks that are buying super chats, buying memberships for themselves, for other people. Very, very generous of people to buy a ton of memberships today. I am astounded. And thank you to everyone just for engaging in the chat, engaging on in the comments if you're watching on replay. Thank you, of course, as always, to the mods for helping to make sure that this space is a welcoming space for people to agree and disagree. I have a feeling that this trial is going to be one where people really disagree a lot on this case based on their perceptions, their life experiences, and how they see this particular issue. I think that there is a lot of space for people to disagree reasonably here. So I'm very curious to see how all of this shakes out. And I love the fact that people are engaging, with these different opinions and doing so in a way that is respectful. It's one of the things that I love about this community, about the people in the chat and in the comments is folks that are coming in with these different kinds of opinions. So, thank you again to the mods for helping to make sure that space sort of stays that way so that people can bring those different opinions. Okay. All right. That for me about does it. I will see you guys very soon. This should redirect right into, and I totally just remembered, of course, as I'm saying that, let me cut myself off really quick. I want to make sure that this stream for the afternoon goes from unlisted to public. Let me edit that really quick. Okay. Now it is public. It says, actually, let me edit the timing on it again here because I want to try to get it at about the same time that the court says. Okay. So, all right. So now it should redirect automatically into the afternoon stream. But if not, I am going to, oh my gosh, and the poll. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for the reminder. Okay. Ending the poll here. But also the afternoon stream will go up. If it doesn't automatically redirect you, go to the channel or to any of the social media places. I'm going to be posting stuff with links so that folks can find it as well. Okay. Poll results going into opening statements. How do you lean regarding Baldwin's involuntary manslaughter charge? 46% said need more information. 33% said guilty. 19% said not guilty, and this is 1,300 votes. So this is a good sizable poll for us here. But yeah, I mean that seems pretty reasonable for more than anything for people to be saying that they need more information. But I also understand people that have already formulated some conclusions based on the coverage of this case. There's been a lot talked about in the public space, in the public sphere. So yeah, totally get that too. It'll be interesting to see if that changes, how, if anyhow, that it changes. All right, folks. Okay, that does it. I will see you guys very, very soon. Thank you so much once again for joining me, and I look forward to joining you guys on this crazy journey for this trial moving forward. All right.